Ling Han released the golden light from the primal chaos extreme lightning tower. Immediately, he shot out the illusory divine light, causing this golden light to once again sink into an illusion and be unable to react. Now, Ling Han was certain that the might of the divine light of illusion was far beyond his imagination. It could even affect other celestial lights. This was too shocking. He began to refine the golden celestial light. The celestial cauldron opened, swallowing the celestial light and fusing with it. The speed was very slow, but Ling Han was not in a hurry either. This celestial light appeared to be dazzlingly golden, and should be of the metal element, but in truth, it was a bolt of lightning. It only had the metal element and was the heptagold yang lightning. Every time the heptagold yang lightning was about to awaken, Ling Han would immediately use the divine light of illusion to attack it, causing this celestial light to once again sink into an illusion, completely unable to resist. It wasn't difficult at all, aside from being slightly slower. No matter how slow it would end. 3 days later, Ling Han had succeeded. 6 divine lights. A smile appeared on Ling Han's face. Aside from the primal chaos divine lightning, the might of the other 4 bolts of lightning were slightly inferior, and could only be comparable to a saint technique. However, when all 5 bolts of lightning were used at the same time, it was equivalent to a young great emperor leading 4 young saints to gang up on his opponent. Who could withstand that? Moreover, he also had the divine light of illusion, which was even more terrifying, causing people to die inexplicably. He exited the tree hollow, left the 10,000 Beasts Mountains, and returned to the city. Though there was still a large amount of celestial medicines here that had not been harvested, that was no longer the main point. Ling Han still needed 3 streaks of celestial light, so every celestial cauldron would fuse with 1 streak of celestial light. This was the most important thing. He continued to check to see if there were any other places where the celestial light had appeared. In truth, there were many legends about celestial light. It was said that in the dark abyss, there were several flashes of light of death. Even a cultivator of the core formation tier would immediately turn into a dried corpse upon coming into contact with them. There was also the blazing flame valley, where divine light flickered in the sky-burning flames, and there was nothing that could not be burned. Ling Han conducted a selection process, and very soon he decided to go to Black Tortoise Island. This was an island that had just emerged from the seabed. From afar, it looked like a giant turtle that was floating on the water's surface. And after some old antiques had flipped through the ancient records, they were very sure that this was where the divine beast, the black tortoise, had died. The black tortoise was the descendant of the divine beast, Xuanwu. Thus, its bloodline was naturally slightly inferior as well. Could not be considered a real divine beast, but could only be considered a subsidiary divine beast. It was said that the black tortoise had 2 attributes, water and earth. After it died, it would definitely be able to nourish celestial medicine. Thus, the Black Tortoise Island was a medicinal garden, and its value was so great that it was heaven-defying. Furthermore, since it was a subsidiary divine beast, there was naturally also the cultivation technique of a divine beast, and for demonic beasts this was a supreme inheritance. This island had just risen from the seabed for 3 days, but countless forces had already left upon hearing the news. There were even a great many old monsters that had moved out, hoping to obtain a great herb that could help them break through or extend their lifespan there. It was also rumored that there was celestial light streaking around the island. A celestial light had appeared on the island where the divine beast had died. The quality of this celestial light should be higher, right? Thus, Ling Han decided to go to Black Tortoise Island. He left as he said he would. He set out on his journey, first arriving at the coast, and then flew on his tool. There were many fierce beasts on the sea, and there was no shortage of core formation tier elites, true self-tier great beasts, so it was extremely unsafe to travel by ship or tread on the sea. Thus, Ling Han gave up the idea of using imminent skyline to speed up the journey. If one flew on a tool, their speed would indeed be slightly slower, but the advantage was that it was safe. 2 days later, an island appeared on the horizon. It gradually enlarged, as if it was a continent. This island really looked like a turtle. On one side, it stuck out its head, and on the other there was a tail. It was completely oval in shape. Xiao, He hadn't even flown too close, and Ling Han only felt a powerful pressure. Instantly, he fell down from the skies and plopped into the sea. Ling Han hurriedly treaded on the waves and arrived near the island. There was no beach on this island, and there were steep walls all around, as if they had been sliced by a saber. Ling Han began to climb, and after some effort he finally reached the top. He saw that this was a dense forest, and there was a majestic mountain ahead of him. The height was astonishing. "He's so fragrant." Ling Han took a sniff. He could smell the fragrance of herbs. As the Alchemy Emperor, he could immediately confirm that this was a great herb. He had not come especially for celestial medicine, but since they had encountered each other, there was naturally no reason for him to give up. He moved upon smelling the fragrance, heading towards where the celestial medicine was. After passing through a small forest, a small clearing appeared in front of him. Then, he saw a tiny deer standing there, scratching its neck with its hind hoof. This medicinal fragrance was clearly coming from this tiny deer. Ling Han activated his ocular technique, and this tiny deer instantly became transparent. There was no organ or blood in its body. Rather, it was a whole being. As it turned out, this was the celestial medicine which had only taken the form of a deer. Ling Han immediately leaped out, but the tiny deer was also extremely alert. It broke into a run, and as its hooves galloped, its speed was astonishingly fast. Ling Han hurriedly set off in pursuit, following closely behind. This tiny deer was extremely slippery as it circled around the large trees and boulders, preventing Ling Han from making full use of his advantage in speed. Then let's have a taste of the divine light of illusion. This was an attack on the level of divine sense. With a mere thought from Ling Han, the divine light of illusion had already shot out and landed on the tiny deer. Instantly, the tiny deer's movements came to a halt. Then, with a flash, it turned into a ginseng. It was as thick as a child's arm, and was completely golden in color, exuding an alluring fragrance. This was a great herb, true self-tier level, at least. Ling Han swept over and had just picked up the ginseng. He immediately pounced forwards, and saw that there was already a deep pit where he had been standing, and there was presently dense energy seething. He looked to the side, and saw 3 young people walk out. They were all men. 2 of them were cauldron forging tiers, but one of them was shockingly a core formation tier elite. Furthermore, his aura was still very unstable, so it was obvious that he had not broken through for very long. "Put down the celestial medicine and I can spare your life," the young man who was in the core formation tier said calmly. There was a hint of arrogance in his voice. Ling Han searched through his mind, and suddenly came to a realization. "You're Li Shiming, right?" "That's right." The core formation tier cultivator nodded. Li Shiming, ranked 89th on the list of cauldron forging tiers in the Galaxy Network. However, he had already broken through to the level of core formation tier. Being able to rank in the top 100 of the cauldron forging tier, how powerful would he be after advancing into the core formation tier? Even Feng Jixing was far from being a match for him. Thus, he was naturally arrogant and had enough qualifications. "Now that you know who I am, why don't you leave the celestial medicine and scram?" Li Shiming shouted. "Did you hear that? My brother Li is a busy man. He doesn't have time to waste on you," one of his lackeys said. "Faster, faster," the other lackey also said impatiently. Ling Han cracked a smile. "What if I don't hand it over? Then your only fate would be death." Li Shiming attacked without any scruples. The present him should be invincible among outsiders. Ling Han hurriedly activated the imminent skyline. With a turn of his body, he dodged Li Shiming's attack. This made Li Shiming extremely displeased. He had just broken through to the core formation tier not too long ago, and now that he had broken through, he was naturally 100 times more confident. However, now that he had made a move, Ling Han managed to dodge, which was equivalent to slapping him across the face. Li Shiming flew into a thunderous rage, and quickly set off in pursuit of Ling Han, wanting to blast Ling Han into smithereens. Top-notch prodigies naturally mastered high-level movement techniques. When Li Shiming was cauldron forging tier, his speed was probably only slightly inferior to Ling Han's. Now that he had advanced into the core formation tier, his speed naturally increased to another level, completely surpassing Ling Han. He rapidly approached and delivered a palm strike at Ling Han's back. Ling Han humphed as he unleashed his divine light of illusion. Li Shiming was instantly struck and entered a dazed state. However, a core formation tier was far too powerful. If Ling Han attacked him at this moment, he would definitely instinctively counterattack. That would be far from good. The divine light of illusion was not used like this. Ling Han set his eyes on the other two young men. At present, he was still unable to kill the main culprit, so he would kill these two lackeys first. What? The other two young men were shocked. Why had their brother Li suddenly become stupid and stopped attacking? The two of them looked at each other and hurriedly ran towards Li Shiming. Ling Han was far too bizarre, and this caused them to feel a sense of apprehension. However, when they neared Li Shiming, the fool-like Li Shiming suddenly moved. Shua! His hands shot toward one of them. How could the two of them have imagined that Li Shiming would make a move on them? They were completely unguarded. Furthermore, Li Shiming was a core formation tier cultivator, so even if they were prepared, so what? What the fuck? Pa! They were all mangled by Li Shiming's palm strike. Ling Han rubbed his chin in thought. Why was he snatching away his business? You! At this moment, Li Shiming suddenly came back to his senses. After all, the divine light of illusion had been activated by Ling Han, so its might had been greatly reduced. Thus, it had much less influence on core formation tier cultivators. Ling Han spread his hands. This has nothing to do with me. You were the one who killed them. Li Shiming was furious. He naturally knew that he had fallen into Ling Han's illusion, and that was why he had accidentally killed his own people. The problem was he, a dignified core formation tier, had actually fallen into the illusion of a cauldron forging tier. How could he bring himself to complain? If word of this got out, he would definitely be laughed at by others. He suppressed his anger, and a strong killing intent rose up in him. Die! He charged over and shot out a palm strike, intending to crush Ling Han into dust. Ling Han hurriedly ran. At present, he was still no match for a core formation tier cultivator, especially a prodigy like Li Shiming. Li Shiming gave chase. His speed was even faster than Ling Han's, and it wasn't long before he caught up to him. With a thought from Ling Han, the murderous aura surged out. Li Shiming paused for a moment before immediately returning to normal. He continued to pursue Ling Han. As expected, though the barrage of murderous aura was awesome, its effects on high-level cultivators was considerably inferior. This was more suitable for group battles. As long as one's cultivation level was lower than his, no matter how many of them came, a murderous aura would be shot out, and they would be instantly struck. Mere tricks, Li Shiming sneered. This only made him pause for a moment and had almost no effect. Ling Han smiled, and the divine light of illusion shot out once more. Li Shiming instantly fell into a daze. He was lost in his illusion again. He would seek this guy out for an accounting in the future. Ling Han immediately dashed into the distance. The natural and earthly energy on the island was extremely abundant, so the trees here grew astonishingly tall. Large trees that were several hundred meters tall could be seen everywhere, and even ordinary grass could grow to the height of a few people. Ling Han searched around the island. There were many people here, and there were even more people rushing over. Battle after bloody battle broke out for the celestial medicine. 7 days passed, and Ling Han still did not find any trace of the celestial light. However, he was presently refining the celestial ginseng that he had previously plucked. He did not touch the main ginseng, but merely ate some roots. Couldn't be helped. This was a true self-tier level great herb. If he directly ingested the main ginseng, the only result would be overdoing it and killing himself. This was really a great herb. Even if it was just a few roots, they were extremely nutritious, allowing Ling Han's cultivation level to advance rapidly. He had already formed a leg for his 8th cauldron, and how long had it been since he had advanced into 8 cauldrons? At this rate, he would be able to reach the consummate level of 8 cauldrons in a month's time at most and break through to the 9 cauldrons. The island was filled with fierce battles. There were many celestial medicines here, and they were all extremely valuable. They could easily make a core formation tier or even a true self-tier cultivator battle to the death. Additionally, everyone was also searching for the place where the black tortoise died. A divine beast should have left behind quite a lot of good stuff. Ling Han was in no hurry. It would be best if he could find the place of death of the black tortoise only after he advanced into 9 cauldrons. In that way, his competitiveness would be much stronger. Geniuses and prodigies gathered here. Song Lan, Prosperous Heaven, Feng Jixing, and so on all arrived. Furthermore, quite a number of young prodigies had even broken through to the core formation tier. This caused super geniuses like Feng Jixing and the other prodigies to be unable to keep up. The competition became even more intense, and the outcome to be even more uncertain. Ling Han kept a very low profile. He was just looking for celestial light and digging the celestial medicine here and there. Coincidentally, he also encountered divine substance. As time passed, his cultivation level was also increasing. Another dozen over days later, a big piece of news came out. The place of death of the black tortoise had been found. Instantly, everyone headed in that direction. The black tortoise was the descendant of Xuanwu. Though it was not a real divine beast, it must have inherited the bloodline of the divine beast, and according to legends, the black tortoise divine beast had mastered the strongest defensive technique in the world. Black tortoise earth technique, close to invincible defense. According to legends, when the creation of heaven and earth began, the divine beasts were first born. They were nurtured by the heaven and earth, and they were all ancestral king-level beings. However, the ancestral king's lifespan wasn't unlimited, so these divine beasts also died one after another. The heaven and earth weren't as crazy anymore. Afterward, there was only one ancestral king in each generation, invincible in the world. If the black tortoise earth technique really existed here, then even an imperial clan would be moved, and saints would also move wanting to learn it. Ling Han thought for a moment, but did not move out. Instead, he continued to circle around outside. At present, there were really too many cultivators of the core formation tier here. Even the old monsters of the true self tier had been mobilized. Thus, his cultivation level of equals mere 8 cauldrons was too weak. He wanted to first cultivate to 9 cauldrons. This would increase his abilities by an additional bit. Then, if a fight really broke out, his chances of obtaining it would naturally be much higher. Of course, this was because he possessed a true self-tier level great herb, which allowed him to quickly cultivate and forge the celestial cauldron. If this was known to others, they would definitely scold him for being wasteful. This was a treasure that could greatly improve the cultivation level of a true self-tier cultivator. In fact, it could even help one break through the barrier to the next cultivation level. It was indescribably valuable, and now it was actually used by a cauldron forging tier cultivator to improve his cultivation level. Just how much of a waste was this? However, how could Ling Han possibly care? His own strength was the true way to go. Everything else was useless. His luck was not too bad. Though he did not find any more great herbs, there was still a considerable amount of divine substance. Another dozen over days later, Ling Han finally reached the consummate level of 8 cauldrons. Without waiting for him to begin breaking through, the island trembled violently. He followed the tracks and saw a large number of people running out of the cave, all of them battered and exhausted. Not long after, a colossal white snake slithered out of the hole. With a twist, a few core formation tier cultivators were instantly crushed into minced meat. The white snake was incredibly powerful, and it started a massacre. This was a true self-tier fierce beast, and its strength was incredibly strong. Even if there were a considerable number of true self-tier old monsters here, they were still not the slightest bit on the upper hand against this white snake. Under normal circumstances, encountering this white snake would naturally mean fleeing, but now it involved the inheritance of the divine beast. That was a different story. None of them were willing to give up and wanted to fight this powerful white snake to the death. Ling Han decided to join in. He shot out a divine light of illusion. For a true self-tier cultivator, this kind of illusion could be instantly broken through, but no matter how fast it was broken through, the white snake was still affected, greatly reducing everyone's pressure. Ha! I've found you! With a cold humph, Feng Jixing silently appeared, approaching Ling Han. Ling Han looked over and couldn't help but frown. Core formation tier. This guy actually broke through and advanced into a new level of being. Ling Han did not hesitate in the slightest and shot out a divine light of illusion towards Feng Jixing. Then he turned and fled. For a prodigy like Feng Jixing, once he advanced into the core formation tier, his battle prowess would probably be able to match the middle stage of the core formation tier, and he would be completely outmatched. The divine light of illusion was too awesome. Even if Feng Jixing had advanced into the core formation tier, so what? He had still fallen into an illusion, a smile curling up the corners of his lips, as if he had already killed Ling Han. He immediately woke up, and with a loud roar, set off in pursuit of Ling Han. Ling Han activated Imminent Skyline, and the murderous aura barrage and divine light of illusion overlapped, quickly throwing Feng Jixing off his tail. He felt a strong sense of urgency. By now, Feng Jixing had already advanced into the core formation tier, and his battle prowess completely overwhelmed him. He too had to break through as soon as possible, and only then would he be qualified to resist. Ling Han retreated far away, found a hidden place, and began to cultivate in seclusion, breaking through to 9 cauldrons. In this period of time, everyone was still battling fiercely with the white snake, and the battle was so intense that even the mountains were shaking and the ground was shaking. However, Ling Han acted as if he had not felt anything, and merely immersed himself in breaking through to 9 cauldrons. This was the last barrier in cauldron forging tier. After calming his mind and spirit for 7 days, Ling Han finally reached his prime condition and began to charge towards 9 cauldrons. This time, the pressure was immense. The 8 celestial cauldrons released a powerful repulsive force, stopping the formation of the 9th cauldron. Ling Han didn't use the power of the living beings in the dimensions inside his body, because even Feng Jixing could cultivate to 9 cauldrons, so how could it be that he still had to rely on the power of the living beings in the dimensions inside his body? How could he possibly lose to Feng Jixing? Ling Han forcibly forged the core of the celestial cauldron. At the beginning, he naturally failed repeatedly, but he learned from his failures. 3 days later, a smile appeared on his face. The core of the 9th cauldron. Success. This meant that he had already advanced into 9 cauldrons, and was standing on the last step of the cauldron forging tier. Right now, was he qualified to battle against core formation tier? Ling Han came out of seclusion. He planned to check out the battle situation and see how the battle with Whitesnake was going. He rushed to the cave entrance and saw that there were many pools of blood left here, as well as pieces of scales. These should have fallen off the body of the Whitesnake. The battle had already ended. There were still people healing their injuries outside, so Ling Han went over to investigate the situation. He found out that the battle between them and the Whitesnake had continued all the way until the afternoon of the day before yesterday. The Whitesnake had finally exhausted all its power and had no choice but to flee from the island. Now its whereabouts were unknown. Thus, everyone took this opportunity to once again enter into the cave. Ling Han also strode into the cave. This mountain cave was very big, and the top was at least 30 over meters tall. Standing there, Ling Han instantly appeared very insignificant. After walking for a while, a crossroads appeared, and there were also crossroads further down the crossroads, turning this cave into a labyrinth. Ling Han soon met others. It was an old man and a young man. They had already walked here for more than a day, and had long lost their way. They were about to return to the exit. As he walked, he outlined the terrain here in his mind. After 3 days, this labyrinth was gradually and completely outlined in his mind. He found the right path, and continued to walk downwards. After walking for close to 2 hours, there was no path ahead, but there was a spring. It was very big, big enough for people to squeeze in. Ling Han didn't hesitate as he entered the spring and continued to advance. So cold. This water was icy cold, and even Ling Han felt a chill. Thankfully, he could still withstand it. Another hour later, Ling Han suddenly broke through the water's surface. He was still in the cave, but there was a path EAD again. Ling Han continued onwards, but as he walked, the path ahead of him suddenly opened up, revealing a valley. Green mountains and clear waters. the scenery as beautiful as a painting. This was clearly still on Black Tortoise Island, but because flight was not possible on the island, this place was cut off from the rest of the world, and could only be reached through an underwater passage. Hong! 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 The shock waves of battle could be felt ahead of him, and it was extremely intense. Had the inheritance of the divine beast appeared and caused a great battle? Ling Han hurriedly quickened his steps. He swept into the valley and soon saw a large group of people. There were outsider prodigies such as Feng Jixing, Song Lan, and Prosperous Heaven. There were also native elites who were battling fiercely, and what they were fighting over was actually a nest of eggs. What a bunch of gluttons! Ling Han thought to himself as he continued to dash forward. Not everyone was fighting because those who were attacking now were all in the core formation tier. How could Cauldron Forging tiers have the right to interfere? It was not just Feng Jixing. Those like Song Lan and Prosperous Heaven had also advanced into core formation tier. They had probably obtained enough divine substance and increased the grade of the celestial cauldrons to the level of perfection. They had also formed 9 cauldrons, so what else were they waiting for if they still did not break through into 9 cauldrons? There was no true self tier here, and it was unknown whether those old monsters had gone further ahead or were circling around in the labyrinth behind them. Isn't it just a few eggs? Is there any need to fight over them like this? Ling Han shuffled over to one of them. This was a beautiful woman, and she was given a scare by Ling Han. Who wouldn't be shocked to see a person appear soundlessly from the sidelines? And this was only just to say something. What if he wanted to molest her? She hurriedly took a few steps back and looked at Ling Han with a vigilant gaze. Who is it that dares to be so rude to Fairy Lu? She was not alone. There was still an escort by her side, and he rebuked Ling Han angrily. The beauty, on the other hand, recovered. Waving her hand, she said, "Forget it." Only then did those people drop the matter, but the gazes they directed at Ling Han were still extremely unfriendly. Those are eggs laid by the white snake. That's why they're fighting over it. As long as you drip your own blood before the baby snakes hatch, it's extremely likely that the baby snakes will recognize you as their master, and you would obtain a powerful pet beast. The beauty took the initiative to explain, so that was the case. The white snake was indeed strong. It was also a true self-tier elite, and could match the combined attacks of a considerable number of old monsters of the same cultivation level. Furthermore, the living creatures here grew extremely fast, and could reach the true self-tier in a few dozen years. Very soon, they would become a source of help. Thank you. He nodded at the beauty. Humph, so what if you know? Those participating in the competition are Feng Jixing, Zhao Wuji, and Nangong Hao. If you go up, you'll instantly lose your life. A young man couldn't help but mock. Zhao Wuji and Nangong Hao? Nangong Hao was the number 2 person of Cauldron Forging tier in North Heavenly Realm, only inferior to Feng Jixing. Of course, this person had now already advanced into core formation tier. He was very recognizable, with a head of white hair. Ling Han soon found the corresponding person. That was a young man. In fact, he was extremely handsome. Coupled with his white hair, he didn't look old. Instead, he had a unique charm. There was also Zhao Wuji. This was a rising star. It was said that he was very powerful and had been compared to Feng Jixing. This Ling Han did not recognize because there were over a dozen men in the battle royale. Aside from Feng Jixing and Nangong Hao, there were still over a dozen. Ling Han was eager to give it a try. Just how strong was he at 9 cauldrons? He leaped out. Those who were watching the battle were all dumbfounded. How could there be such a person who was rushing to his death? Hiss, this guy is really too easily provoked, isn't he? I only said a few words to him, and he really rushed up. The young man that had previously mocked Ling Han murmured. His words had always been harsh, and he was not deliberately targeting Ling Han, but was doing this to everyone. Sigh! The others all shook their heads. Barging into the battle royale of the core formation tier elites was a suicidal action. However, their eyes soon widened in disbelief. What had they seen? Ling Han walked like he was walking on flat land in the chaotic battle, and was rapidly approaching that nest of snake eggs. How dare you? Those who were battling fiercely all discovered Ling Han. Feng Jixing immediately revealed blazing killing intent, while Song Lan was surprised. As she saw it, Ling Han had disappeared for a very, very long time, and only appeared suddenly at this moment. Most people didn't recognize Ling Han, appearing extremely confused. A mere cauldron forging tier cultivator actually dared to barge in? However, this cauldron forging tier was truly extraordinary. It was unimaginable that he could remain unscathed even in the chaotic battle between the core formation tier cultivators. Feng Jixing was extremely wary of Ling Han, and he immediately charged over. Half a month passed, and he had also completely stabilized his cultivation level. The might of this palm strike had clearly increased. Ling Han clenched a fist and replied with a punch. Boom! The two of them exchanged a blow, and Ling Han was instantly sent flying. However, he immediately turned around and landed on the ground, baring his teeth endlessly. He had suffered a great loss in this blow, and felt like even his bones were about to shatter. However, this scene rendered everyone speechless. Fuck! This was too freakish, wasn't it? Though Feng Jixing has just advanced into the core formation tier, he has cultivated 9 cauldrons in the cauldron forging tier. Furthermore, the quality of the celestial cauldron is astonishing. After stabilizing his cultivation level, his battle prowess is at least at the 3rd heaven. To be able to take a blow from him without being injured, this cauldron forging tier's battle prowess must be 1st heaven. Hiss! A cauldron forging tier that has the battle prowess of core formation tier. Though the core formation tier only had 4 stages: the early stage, the middle stage, the late stage, and the consummate stage, how could the battle prowess of 2 people at the early stage be the same when one broke through from Heaven Cauldron and the other from 9 cauldrons? Also, could the breakthrough with a bronze cauldron, golden cauldron, 9-colored glass cauldron be the same? Thus, there would be a reference value for the battle prowess of core formation tier elites, which would be quantified by heavens. For example, Feng Jixing had just advanced into the core formation tier, and once he stabilized his cultivation level, he had reached the battle prowess of 3rd heaven. Moreover, the majority of people would have to reach the pinnacle of the early stage of core formation tier, close to the middle stage, and only then would they be able to reach the battle prowess of 3rd heaven. Everyone was discussing spiritedly, and then did not dare believe it. There should be an insurmountable gulf between cauldron forging tier and core formation tier, which could not be breached no matter what. This was because the highest limit of cauldron forging tier was 9 cauldrons, and whichever 9 cauldrons could not possibly possess the battle prowess of the core formation tier, no matter how stunning he was. However, Ling Han broke this iron rule. What a monster! Feng Jixing's expression changed drastically. Of course, it was not because of Ling Han's strength, but rather the significance behind it. The current Ling Han should have advanced into 9 cauldrons. Hiss, when this guy was in the 8 cauldrons, he was already capable of matching himself in 9 cauldrons, and once he advanced into 9 cauldrons, he even possessed the battle prowess of the core formation tier, even if it was only the weakest 1st heaven. He definitely had to kill him. If this guy was allowed to advance into the core formation tier, just how terrifying would his battle prowess be? 4th heaven? 5th heaven? Feng Jixing charged towards Ling Han again. His willpower was firm, and his eyes were filled with killing intent. Ling Han sighed. Though he had the power to match the weakest core formation tier, it was obvious that Feng Jixing was not the weakest core formation tier. He moved and headed towards that nest of snake eggs. At the same time, he shot out a murderous aura attack, causing Feng Jixing's movements to involuntarily slow down. Humph! No matter how freakish you are, you're still nothing more than a cauldron forging tier, the white-haired Nangong Hao said coldly. With a twist of his right hand, he also launched an attack at Ling Han. His Galaxy Network ranking was only inferior to Feng Jixing's, and now that he had advanced into the core formation tier, who was stronger or weaker between him and Feng Jixing would only be discovered after they had battled. The might of this palm strike was domineering, and had similarly reached 3rd heaven. Ling Han was unmoved. He shot out a murderous aura attack. No matter how freakish you were, so what? You were still hit, and the attack immediately stopped. Seeing Ling Han continue to pounce, everyone was filled with disbelief. 2 top-notch prodigies were sniping at him separately, and furthermore, they had the advantage of a major cultivation level, and this still allowed Ling Han to break out of the siege calmly. Just what kind of fantasy was this? However, everyone was fighting over the snake eggs, and seeing that Ling Han was already close enough, how could the others possibly continue to be surprised? They hurriedly moved one after another. Even Song Lan and Prosperous Heaven were no exception. Ling Han laughed loudly. Divine Light of Illusion activated, and instantly everyone was hit, falling into their own illusions. Though he had succeeded with a single move, Ling Han also stumbled, almost collapsing. Attacking a dozen or so core formation tier elites in one go, even if he was only activating the Divine Light of Illusion, was still too straining. But in the next instant, Ling Han rushed out again and arrived next to the snake eggs. In a single move, he grabbed all the snake eggs. These were living eggs and couldn't be stored into a spatial spirit tool. Thus, it could only be hidden on his body. However, these snake eggs were all larger than a fist, and Ling Han couldn't fit them into his robes either, so he could only throw down a few. This also decreased the aggro, preventing all the core formation tier cultivators from chasing after him. Ling Han, Song Lan shouted. She had already woken up from the illusion, and she charged over with her sword in hand. Prosperous Heaven wasn't far behind either. She was the Buddhist race's holy daughter, and she was skilled at bewitching people's minds. She had a strong resistance against illusions. There was also Feng Jixing and Nangong Hao, who quickly struggled out of the illusion and charged towards Ling Han again. Ling Han couldn't withstand the combined attacks of so many core formation tier elites. With a battle cry, he used Imminent Skyline and fled. Some chased after him while others didn't. Instead, they were fighting over the remaining snake eggs. The division strategy had succeeded. As they watched Ling Han run off, the cauldron forging tiers who were watching from the sidelines all gaped, completely rendered speechless. In their eyes, Ling Han was no longer a human, but rather a god. He was too handsome. Taking treasures from a group of core formation tiers was like taking something out of one's pocket. Was there any other person in this world that could do it? He was so handsome, so cool. It wasn't long before the pursuers all returned in disappointment. To Ling Han, who possessed the murderous aura and divine light of illusion, breaking free from the pursuit was completely no big deal. For Ling Han, collecting these snake eggs was only something he did in passing. His target was not these beast pets, even if they could become the battle prowess of true self tier not too many years later. Ling Han pursued individual strength. For beast pets, he would take them if they came his way, but if they did not, he would not deliberately pursue them. If Feng Jixing and the others knew about this, they would definitely die of fury. If you don't care, then what are you snatching them for? Ling Han rubbed his chin. His current battle prowess had indeed reached the early stage of the core formation tier, but Feng Jixing and the other powerful prodigies possessed battle prowess that was close to the middle stage of the core formation tier once they had broken through to the core formation tier. They still left him far behind. Couldn't be helped. This was the suppression of the major cultivation level. Ling Han felt a sense of urgency. He had to gather all 9 celestial lights as soon as possible, and then break through to the core formation tier. At that time, with how strong his battle prowess was, would Feng Jixing still be worthy of being his opponent? Haha, I finally found you. A long laugh rang out, filled with pleasure. Ling Han turned around, and couldn't help but smile. The visitor was actually Tong Yongning. He wasn't alone, but had 4 clansmen with him. Naturally, they were all youngsters in the foundation building tier. Brat, you can still smile when you see me? Tong Yongning asked coldly. Why can't I smile? Ling Han countered. You can't fly on a tool here, so you're dead meat. Tong Yongning said with a smug smile. The 3 core formation tier elites chased Ling Han into the Black Heaven Temple. Yet they still couldn't find him. However, they didn't expect to encounter Ling Han here. How could a mere cauldron forging tier cultivator that couldn't fly on a tool escape from his grasp? Where are the other 2 core formation tier cultivators in your clan? Ling Han asked. Despicable villain. Third uncle alone is enough to deal with you, a member of the Tong clan interrupted. In the eyes of the 4 of them, Ling Han was naturally already a corpse. Ling Han shook his head and said, "When adults are speaking, why are children interrupting?" He waved his hand, and a burst of power shot out, turning into a green palm that was no different from the size of a human hand. It struck out at that junior from the Tong clan. "How dare you?" Tong Yongning humphed coldly and shot out a palm strike, intercepting that green palm. Pong! The two forces clashed, and both were instantly annihilated. "What?" Tong Yongning immediately looked stunned. Although he hadn't used his full power in this strike, he should have still been able to crush Ling Han. How could both of the attacks have been destroyed? Previously, though Ling Han had the means to resist the early stage of the core formation tier, that was a bolt of lightning which was similar to the might of the spirit tool. It was definitely not his own battle prowess, but this attack was definitely a collision of mystical power. Hiss, a cauldron forging tier cultivator actually had the power to oppose a core formation tier cultivator? What a huge joke! He was extremely stunned there, but those 4 clansmen of the Tong clan were completely unclear about the situation. They only saw that Ling Han's attack had been easily dispersed by Tong Yongning, but they had no idea how much force Tong Yongning had exerted. Hence, the 4 of them sneered repeatedly, looking down on Ling Han completely. "Third uncle, this villain is too bold. He still dares to make a move in front of you. That's right. Please apprehend him. Third uncle." They all called out, wanting nothing more than to personally rush up and fight Ling Han. Tong Yongning took a deep breath to calm himself down. Cauldron Forging Tier was only Cauldron Forging Tier, after all. There was absolutely no way they could oppose a core formation tier. That had to be the case. Ling Han smiled faintly. "Third brother Tong, are you going to apprehend me?" "It would be as easy as the turn of a palm." Tong Yongning moved and charged towards Ling Han. Ling Han used Imminent Skyline to dodge easily and freely. "The Tong clan is truly overbearing," he said with a shake of his head. "I was perfectly fine as I stood by the side of the road. Yet you people actually controlled a large ship to crash into me. You didn't manage to crash into me, and you even came down to hunt me down. Heh! Who gave you people the audacity to do this?" Being reprimanded by him like this, Tong Yongning's expression was very ugly. "So what if the Tong clan was overbearing? Who asked you to be a mere cauldron forging tier?" However, a cauldron forging tier was actually so hard to kill, and this was what made him feel embarrassed. "Enough with the nonsense. Die!" he roared. He unleashed a barrage of attacks at Ling Han. Ling Han continued to dodge and said, "Third brother Tong, do you believe that karma exists in this world?" Tong Yongning didn't speak at all. He only had one thought, and that was to kill Ling Han so that this brat would never be able to speak. Evil has its retribution, and this has been proven time and time again. Ling Han said calmly, "However, it is better to depend on oneself than on others. Today, I will kill you and collect some interest." "Ha ha!" Tong Yongning sneered. In front of him, Ling Han was completely unable to fight back, and he still dared to speak conceited nonsense? Despicable villain. You can only wait to be killed. Close your eyes and accept your death. This can allow you to die a more painless death. The 4 clansmen of the Tong clan all called out. As they saw it, Ling Han was naturally dead for sure. It was only a matter of time. Ling Han smiled faintly and made no further move to dodge. Instead, he clenched his right hand into a fist and greeted Tong Yongning's attack. "Humph! You really don't know the immensity of heaven and earth." Tong Yongning smirked coldly. A mere cauldron forging tier cultivator actually wanted to confront him head-on. Where did he get such courage from? Boom! Ling Han's fist greeted Tong Yongning's left palm. Instantly, power surged, and the remaining power of core formation tier surged out, turning into tumultuous waves. Woo! Ah! The 4 clansmen of the Tong clan all released terrible cries, and were sent flying by the shockwave. The attack landed, and the energy gradually subsided. Those 4 people were only sent flying, but were not injured. They hurriedly got back to their feet, yet saw a scene that caused their scalps to go numb. Ling Han stood proudly, his bearing captivating. How was this possible? How could a mere cauldron forging tier cultivator be qualified to stand against a core formation tier cultivator? The sun had risen from the west? How could this be? Tong Yongning also exclaimed in shock. Previously, he had blocked Ling Han's attack. Though he had also sensed how strong Ling Han was, Ling Han had been dodging all this while after that, making him think that it was possible that Ling Han had channeled a secret technique, and that was why he had temporarily exploded with such great power. He could only deliver a single strike. However, in the exchange of blows with Ling Han just now, he discovered that the latter's power was surging fiercely, and was not inferior to him at all. You're clearly only at the cauldron forging tier, so how can your power reach the first heaven? Ling Han smiled faintly. Because I am a prodigy. These words were extremely pretentious. Who would have the nerve to praise themselves like this? But no matter who it was, as long as they had witnessed that scene just now, they would not say that Ling Han was shameless. A cauldron forging tier was capable of resisting a core formation tier, and no matter how pretentious he was, it would not be too much. Tong Yongning frowned deeply. This wasn't a prodigy. This was clearly a monster. Who cares what prodigy or freak you are? The cauldron forging tier is ultimately just the cauldron forging tier. Just see how I will kill you. He charged over again, and the battle prowess of the core formation tier was completely unleashed. Ling Han was unafraid. He used the 18 Arhat palm, and exchanged blows with Tong Yongning. Tong Yongning was astonished. Why did Ling Han also know this secret technique? It should be known that he had also entered into the Black Heaven Temple and learnt this fist technique. But he clearly hadn't seen Ling Han at that time. Then how had Ling Han learned this secret technique? How did you learn it? He couldn't help but ask. You guess, Ling Han said with a smile. Tong Yongning naturally wouldn't guess. He sneered and channeled the 18 Arhat palm, clashing with Ling Han. Don't think that only you can do it. Tong Yongning shouted loudly. He also had to use the 18 Arhat palm. He had no choice but to use it because this fist technique was Venerate tier level. If he used an ordinary technique to oppose it, he would definitely be at a great disadvantage. In a situation when power was equal, the stronger the technique, the greater the advantage, and may even be the deciding factor. Boom! The secret techniques of the Buddhist race clashed. In just a few moves, it was clear who was stronger. Tong Yongning could only unleash 30% of the might of the 18th Arhat palm, while Ling Han could unleash 60%. This was definitely a crushing advantage. Instantly, Tong Yongning was at a disadvantage and could only parry. Fuck! The 4 members of the Tong clan were all watching dumbfounded. What was going on here? How could there be such a freakish guy? Ling Han laughed loudly and moved aggressively, suppressing Tong Yongning to the point that Tong Yongning had no temper at all. Both of them were using the same technique, so there was nothing much to say. Whoever grasped it more proficiently would naturally have an advantage. However, Tong Yongning clearly knew that the technique he had mastered was far from being as proficient as Ling Han's. He was at too much of a disadvantage, yet could only drink poison to quench his thirst. This was because although he could unleash 100% of the might of other techniques, the level of the technique itself was too weak. 100% of the might could not compare to 30% of the 18 Arhat palm. He released a furious roar of defiance. He was a core formation tier cultivator, and if he lost to a mere cauldron forging tier cultivator, that would practically be an eternal joke, and his name would be infamous for 10,000 years. But what could he do? Ling Han smiled calmly. Do you think that the gap between you and me is only this little bit? He raised his hand, and a golden divine light shot out. This was the heptagold lightning tribulation. Pa! The attack landed on Tong Yongning, and he was instantly sent flying. Though the heptagold lightning was inferior to the primal chaos divine lightning, it could match the saint technique no matter what. Unleashed from Ling Han's hands, how could Tong Yongning not be hit? The mouths of the 4 clansmen of the Tong clan were already wide open. They stared blankly at Ling Han, completely unable to believe their eyes. Ah! Tong Yongning leaped up. There was a long wound on his left rib that had been caused by the heptagold lightning tribulation, causing him to be severely injured. Evil brat! He charged back. He definitely could not lose to Ling Han, or he would become a laughingstock for all eternity. Ling Han raised his hand again. Divine water in lightning. Lightning flashed past, and Tong Yongning was once again sent flying. This time, his whole body was enshrouded in ice, but there was also a burning smell wafting out, which was extremely bizarre. Ah! Tong Yongning lunged over again. Ling Han smiled, and an azure lightning bolt shot out. It was second with true lightning. Without a doubt, Tong Yongning was sent flying again. This time, after Tong Yongning got back to his feet, he didn't dare to make another move. Now, it was not a matter of not leaving behind an infamous reputation, but rather that it was possible that he would die here. Compared to fame, Tong Yongning was naturally more concerned about his own life. Not too long after, he would leave this place and go to a wider world where the core formation tier cultivators could live for 4,000 years. 4,000 years, and he was only in his 40s now. He hadn't even lived to a fraction of his life, so how could he be willing to die? He suddenly turned around and fled. In his dreams. Ling Han unleashed the black light of illusion, and Tong Yongning's movements instantly came to an abrupt halt. However, the expressions on his face were extremely varied. At one moment he was glaring at Ling Han, and at the next he was smiling. This was an extremely bizarre sight. Had he been bewitched? The members of the Tong clan were all shocked. At such a critical moment, third uncle had actually been bewitched. What could they do? Ling Han strode over and stretched out a hand to grab Tong Yongning. However, though Tong Yongning was in an illusion, his instincts as a cultivator were still present, and he immediately launched an attack at Ling Han. In fact, he had also created such an enemy in the illusion. At this moment, he was attacking this enemy. Ling Han snapped his fingers. Pa! The illusion instantly vanished. Tong Yongning suddenly came back to his senses. He then discovered that he was actually attacking Ling Han. Fuck, he must have seen a ghost. He was clearly going to run, but why had it become him taking the initiative to attack now? Not good. That was an illusion. Realization dawned on him in shock. He had been trapped in an illusion just now, and that why he had launched an attack at Ling Han. This scene was very familiar. Ah, the Black Heaven Temple. Ling Han knew the 18 Arhat Palm, and also possessed the means to create illusions. This guy must have also gone to the Black Heaven Temple, only that he had hidden his identity while he was there. Ling Han moved, and this time he directly used an imperial technique. Demonic monkey fists. Pong! The punch landed, and Tong Yongning was sent flying again. This time he was in trouble. More than half of the bones in his body had been broken. This was a blow that had been imbued with frequency attack, and its destructive power was incredibly terrifying. Pooh! Tong Yongning threw up blood continuously. As a core formation tier cultivator, his vitality was still quite tenacious. He actually didn't die. However, after sustaining an imperial technique, he was also on the verge of death. Otherwise, wouldn't the imperial technique be too cheap? Ah! Tong Yongning roared in fury. Waves of power fluctuated from his body. They were incredibly powerful, and they were also brimming with vitality. He was burning the celestial core in his body to recover his vitality. The effects were extremely fast, but after the celestial core was burnt, it was equivalent to crippling his own cultivation level, and his strength would very soon drop to the level of cauldron forging tier or even lower than that. He didn't want to either, but if he didn't burn the celestial core now, his only fate would be death, and he didn't want to die. Ling Han humphed and shot out a punch. The second style. Combined with the might of the first style, the might of this punch directly soared to a whole new level. How mysterious was the imperial technique. Being locked down by Ling Han's intent, Tong Yongning couldn't dodge at all. He could only stretch out his hands to block in front of him. Die! Ling Han shouted coldly. This punch brought with it boundless fury. The domineering and arrogant actions of the Tong clan flashed past his eyes, one after another, causing this punch of his to burn, turning into a fist of towering fury. Pong! The punch arrived, and a terrifying power surged. Ah! Tong Yongning screamed in agony as his entire body exploded. A shower of blood rained down from the sky, accompanied by the vigorous blood and chi of a core formation tier cultivator. After combusting the celestial core, Tong Yongning had actually recovered to his prime condition. But so what? Thus, Tong Yongning's boundless resentment was still lingering in the air. In his prime condition, he had still been obliterated by a single punch. Even if he became a ghost, he wouldn't be able to rest in peace. Ling Han withdrew his fist, then looked towards the remaining 4 clansmen of the Tong clan. Those 4 people were all trembling, their expressions filled with extreme terror. The 2 of them immediately knelt down and began kowtowing towards Ling Han. Meanwhile, the other 2 turned around and fled. With a thought from Ling Han, the barrage of murderous aura surged out, and the 2 running members of the Tong clan immediately fell forwards. Meanwhile, a kneeling member of the Tong clan also leaned forwards and collapsed onto the ground. All 3 of them had had their hearts burst and died directly. The last person trembled, his eyes filled with fear. The 3 clansmen were still alive and kicking just a second ago, but in the next second, they had become corpses, so how could he not be afraid? Go back and tell Tong Xiao and Tong Shuhua that I'll soon go find them and tell them to clean their necks, Ling Han said calmly. Leaving alive a man to act as messenger, Ling Han strode off. This battle allowed him to have a clearer understanding of his own battle prowess. In terms of power, he could already match the early stage of core formation tier, which was about first heaven. And if he used various techniques, then his battle prowess would be able to advance to the next heaven. After walking for a while, Ling Han gradually felt the pressure. This was a suppression on a higher level, causing him to gradually feel strained, as if he could not move a single step. Fortunately, he could still hold on for the time being. He continued to advance, but his speed had clearly slowed down. A day later, a palace actually appeared ahead of him. This could not be considered luxurious at all. It was very plain, exuding an ancient aura. That pressure originated from this palace. When he arrived here, he felt a fear that if he took a few more steps, his body would explode. This was not impossible. Previously, there were a great many corpses of saints under the Black Heaven Temple, and they could not approach at all. They had to circle around. And the corpses of those saints had all been dissected and drained of all of their essence. Their might was completely inferior to real corpses of saints. Otherwise, they wouldn't even be able to walk around. However, this was the lair of a subsidiary divine beast, and after so many years, who knew how much aura that the subsidiary divine beast had left behind? These auras were at least saint level, so their might was naturally incomparable. Outside the palace, Ling Han saw a great many people. There were true self-tier old monsters, and there were also cauldron-forging tier outsiders. They all wanted to enter the palace, but were completely unable to do so. Who would be able to enter? Under such a terrifying pressure, even true self-tier elites could only prostrate. Anyone could guess that this was the abode of that black tortoise all those years ago. Who knows? There may even be its remains inside. It was a subsidiary divine beast, and whether it was its blood, flesh, fur, or bones, they were all supreme precious treasures. Even saints would be tempted. But now, the treasure mountain was right in front of their eyes, yet they were unable to enter. How could they not beat their chests and stamp their feet in frustration? Ling Han, on the other hand, wasn't too disappointed. His goal was very clear. He had come for the celestial light, and as for the others, it was good luck to get them, but it was fine even if he couldn't. Xiao, a streak of light flew out of the palace, turning into a streak of light that danced in the skies. Celestial light! Quite a number of people exclaimed in shock. Some were even more envious. This naturally was those cauldron-forging tiers that had yet to break through into core formation tier. As long as one fused a streak of celestial light, one would be able to cultivate a mystical power, and its might would at least be equivalent to a 4th pinnacle-level precious technique. Ling Han activated his eye technique and examined it closely. This streak of light was earthen yellow in color, but it itself was a bolt of lightning. 5 earth nether lightning. A thought suddenly flashed in Ling Han's head. This was another lightning with elemental alignment, which was the same as the heptagold lightning tribulation and divine water in lightning. How could it be suppressed? After that streak of light danced in 2 circles, Xiao, it returned to the palace, as if it had gone to rest. Meanwhile, Ling Han mulled over how he could capture this streak of celestial light. To avoid trouble, he had already modified his appearance and soul fluctuations to prevent others from disturbing him. The black light of illusion? No, Ling Han shook his head. This place restricted his ability to fly. Even if he froze that streak of celestial light, he would not be able to tear through the air and ascend, and take the celestial light for his own. Then what was he to do? Ling Han rested his chin on his hand, and fell into deep thought. A great many people had come, but faced with this great palace, they were completely helpless. They couldn't even get close, so how were they supposed to enter? For them, whose highest cultivation level was only true self-tier, the might of a subsidiary divine beast was unsolvable. If they tried to forcefully approach it, their only fate would be death. But the mountain of treasure was right in front of their eyes, so who would be willing to give it up? 1 day, 2 days, 3 days. Every day, that streak of multicolored light would fly out and circle a few times, as if it was taking a breath of fresh air. Furthermore, Ling Han had also been bitterly waiting. Would that streak of light descend? At that time, he would be able to solve the problem with a flash of the black light of illusion. But at least he had not managed to get such a good chance yet. Boom! The 4th day arrived, and a loud tremor was heard. Colossal creature suddenly appeared. That white snake. Ling Han couldn't help but curse internally. That spring previously could only allow one person to pass through. This white snake was so massive, so how had it squeezed through? Of course, as powerful as a true self-tier elite, the white snake could naturally change its size at will, or there were other passageways that allowed it to enter. Thinking of this, he couldn't help but laugh in spite of himself. Was this the time to be curious about this problem? This white snake was clearly extremely furious. It had been chased off, and its descendants had all been snatched away, causing its killing intent to soar. There was no such thing as negotiation among wild beasts. From the very beginning, it had launched a mad offensive. With a sweep of its tail, it was as if a mountain was sweeping over, which was incredibly terrifying. The true self-tier great beast unleashed a mad barrage of attacks. Who dared to block it head-on? Even those true self-tier old monsters could only give it a wide berth. After their physique reached a certain level, there was absolutely no need for them to cultivate. They were born strong. Ling Han also retreated, trying his best to get as close to that palace as possible. This pressure was naturally the same for the white snake. As expected, before the white snake's snake tail had even lashed out, it was as if it had been electrocuted, and hurriedly shrunk back. Immediately, there were people who followed suit. Very soon, everyone had retreated to the side of the palace, and used the aura of the subsidiary divine beast to suppress it, so that this white snake did not dare to attack at all. The white snake was enraged. It slithered around in the surroundings, continuously sticking out its tongue, releasing hissing sounds. Its lantern-like eyes continuously swept over everyone, filled with viciousness. Right at this moment, that streak of celestial light flew out of the palace again. With a thought from Ling Han, he raised his hand, and instantly, 5 flashes of lightning shot out at the same time. Aside from the black light of illusion, he unleashed all 5 types of divine light of lightning that he had grasped. He didn't want to destroy the celestial light, but rather lure it. With this strike from him, the streak of light seemed to have been angered. With a schwa, it slashed towards Ling Han. Good. This was the result that Ling Han wanted. He immediately activated the black light of illusion which charged over. This was on the level of divine sense, surpassing all speed. Then, Ling Han discovered that the streak of earthen yellow lightning had stopped less than an inch in front of him. If the speed at which he had shot out the black light of illusion was slightly slower, the result would be that he would be hit. With how terrifying this bolt of lightning was, even if he didn't die from the strike, he would be half dead. So close. Ling Han did not hesitate in the slightest, and used the primal chaos extreme lightning tower to store away this celestial light. It was good enough that he had taken it. As for refining it, he would take his time in the future. Of course, this scene was also witnessed by others, instantly drawing the envious and jealous gazes of a great many people. That was celestial light. Retreat. Ling Han decided to leave. He had already achieved his goal, and this palace was under the pressure of the Black Tortoise. He couldn't even enter, so what was the point of staying? This pressure had not dissipated for hundreds of millions of years, and it was also not possible that it would suddenly disappear in a short period of time. Hence, he knew where to cut his losses and claim his gains. Ling Han looked at the white snake. The problem now was, how could he sneak out from under the nose of this ferocious beast? Thankfully, the white snake didn't target Ling Han because he was too weak. This powerful beast set its eyes on those true self-tier-old monsters. In its eyes, it was definitely them that had snatched its eggs, and if it wanted to snatch back its children, it would have to kill these people. Ferocious beasts did not have developed intelligence, and were purely acting on instinct. In fact, White Snake was indeed strong, but it was not strong enough to suppress all the true self-tier elites. Otherwise, it would not have fled at that time. However, this time, the old monsters of true self-tier didn't even have a reason to put their lives on the line. Previously, it was for the inheritance of the subsidiary divine beast, but now, they could not enter into the palace, so they naturally had lost all desire to battle. Ling Han retrieved the void beast hide and draped it over his body in front of everyone. Then he boldly walked forward. "You can do that?" Everyone was watching dumbfounded. At the same time, they were very envious of Ling Han's ability to conceal himself. But now that the white snake was entrenched ahead of them, which of them would dare make a move to pursue Ling Han? Moreover, now that they had missed the chance at the beginning, they had long since lost track of Ling Han's whereabouts. Even if they wanted to pursue him, it would be fruitless. Ling Han didn't mind leaking the secret of the void beast hide, because this wasn't his original appearance, and this person wouldn't appear again in the future. After arriving at a safe area, Ling Han removed his disguise and left calmly. He did not leave the island at the first instant, but rather searched around. There were many celestial medicines here, so he naturally had to search carefully. His gains were not small. Not only did he obtain celestial medicines, he also obtained divine substances, and only after making a fortune did he leave quietly. After returning to the demonic origin realm, he began to refine the seventh streak of celestial light. After spending some time, he finally succeeded. There were still 2 more to go. As long as he obtained another 2 streaks of celestial light, and cultivated to the peak stage of 9 cauldrons, Ling Han would break through to the core formation tier. At that time, he would go to the Tong clan residence and make a resolution. He continued to search for useful clues. There were practically treasures everywhere in this place. There were inheritances of elites, celestial light, celestial medicines, and so on. It was no wonder that, after it opened, the entire North Heavenly Realm was in an uproar over it. He found a piece of information. This was not news, but old news. In the central area of the demonic origin realm, there was an ancient hall. The doors were tightly locked, and it was extremely dilapidated. However, even though it looked dilapidated, as if a larger storm would be able to completely destroy it, after countless years, not a single person could enter. It did not have the intimidation left behind by an elite. They were just ordinary-looking walls, blocking everyone. Ling Han was curious, so he decided to take a look. Several days later, he arrived at the heart of the demonic origin realm, and he effortlessly found that ancient palace. It was truly ancient. The walls of the palace hall had been corroded by time, and there were marks on them. In many places, the paint had fallen off, revealing the bricks inside. At a glance, one could tell that they were very ordinary. Ordinarily, to say nothing of true self-tier cultivators, even minor characters of the mortal level would be able to easily destroy this kind of palace. But in truth, it had always existed, and no one could enter. He was surprised because he saw a familiar face. Song Lan. This exquisite beauty was like a brilliant star no matter where she was. She was always surrounded by people, and this place was no exception. She was dressed in a long white dress, and did not put on any makeup, yet was incomparably beautiful, causing one's heart to throb wildly, unable to control himself. There were a dozen over young men surrounding her, all of them elegant and graceful, possessing an intimidating aura. Those who were qualified to stay by her side were definitely all supreme prodigies. Ling Han had already disguised himself, so no one could recognize him. Thus, he confidently walked forwards and arrived in front of the main doors. He stretched out a hand to push the doors open. He pushed hard, yet shockingly discovered that his power was like a clay ox entering the sea, instantly disappearing without a trace. Interesting. He retreated a little and shot out a punch at empty air. Power surged, blasting at the great doors. But when this power landed on the great doors, it was similarly like water that had encountered a sponge, completely absorbed. No wonder this palace had never been opened before. It was indeed mysterious. However, it had always been here. Perhaps it had attracted the curiosity of the natives a long time ago, but as time passed, naturally, no one paid any more attention to it. They were no longer surprised by it. Only outsiders would find it novel. Those like Song Lan and Ling Han had all been drawn over. Heh, there's no need to waste your energy. It's impossible to blast open this wall, a young man said. He stroked the wall with his hand and said, I can't help but sigh. Time is the most powerful power. Look, we can't damage it in the slightest, but time can cause it to decay. One day, these walls will collapse. Unfortunately, at that time, perhaps we would have long since died. He deliberately spoke very deeply, as if he wanted to create his own mature bearing. Ling Han looked at the great doors and asked with a smile, Why don't you think of finding the key to open the great doors? That's right. A great many people nodded. This was actually the simplest logic, so why had they not thought of it previously? This was actually a common problem of cultivators. For example, when they explored ancient tombs, which tomb owner would welcome them and leave behind a key when they were alive. Thus, when they encountered abodes, palaces, and so on, their instinctive reaction was that they had to fight their way in. Nonsense, this palace has existed for who knows how long. If we could find the key, would we still need to wait until now? The young man from before asked in displeasure, and even glared at Ling Han. I'm pretending to be reserved here and deliberately showing off in front of a beauty. So why are you undermining me? Ling Han glanced at him and said calmly, I'm only talking about one possibility. Even if you don't agree, you can still talk nicely. Has no one taught you manners? The young man looked humiliated and furious. Do I, Liang Dongkue, need you to teach me a lesson? If you can't control your mouth, I don't mind teaching you, Ling Han said calmly. Liang Dongkue was just about to make a move when he saw Song Lan raise a hand and stop him. He did not dare to be rude to the beauty and hurriedly withdrew his fist. Meanwhile, Song Lan looked towards Ling Han, a puzzled expression appearing on her face. Have we met before? A woman's intuition was really frightening. This disguise of his was completely new. Ling Han laughed loudly. Perhaps you have seen me in your dreams. How dare you? Impudence! All the youngsters berated at the same time, all of them raising their brows, unable to restrain their fury. This was their goddess. Yet Ling Han actually dared to tease her. How could they not be furious? It was as if they had all been cuckolded. Song Lan's pretty face also turned cold. How could this person be so flippant? Though Ling Han had not uttered any obscene words, his intention to take liberties with her was already very obvious. Forget it, don't drop down to his level. She turned around and left, not bothering to look at Ling Han. As she said this, all the young people hurriedly followed behind her. They could not enter this palace at all, so what was the point of staying here? Of course, it was to court the goddess' favor, and see if there was a chance to win the beauty's heart. Seeing these people leave, Ling Han broke into a grin and took out a bronze key. He had obtained this key when he had been in the outermost circle. He had obtained it through the desert, after the Sand Maidens had recognized him as their master. Before this, he had absolutely no idea what this key was used for, but standing in front of the main doors, he suddenly came to a realization. Just now, he had deliberately teased Song Lan. His purpose was naturally to anger her into leaving, because once she left, the others would definitely leave as well. That way, he would be able to calmly open the door and enter alone. Otherwise, those people had basically advanced into the core formation tier by now, and their battle prowess was not inferior to his. In fact, Song Lan was probably even superior to him. Would Ling Han be able to stop these people from entering the palace together with him? He took a deep breath, took the key, and leaned towards the keyhole. This key could be said to be extremely far away from this palace. In fact, it was completely unrelated to this palace. Yet they were so closely linked that Ling Han couldn't help but suspect that this was the greatest secret of this mystery realm. As the White Lotus ancestral king had said, the key was inserted into the lock and fitted seamlessly. Ling Han broke into a grin. He turned the key. Ka, ka, ka. 1 twist, 2 twists, and right until the 9th twist the great doors opened. Without the slightest hesitation, Ling Han pulled out the key, pushed open the doors, and entered. Ahead, an image from before suddenly flashed through Song Lan's mind. It was familiar. She was extremely smart, and she immediately stopped in her tracks. Then, she suddenly turned around. Coincidentally, she saw the scene of Ling Han darting into the palace. She had been tricked. With a soft exclamation, she immediately leaped up and charged towards the palace. However, she saw Ling Han smile at her. Yet his right hand pushed the door without hesitation. Pong! The door slammed shut. She had already charged over, but she was too late. The great doors had already closed, absorbing all the power that she had delivered. Ling Han, she said through gritted teeth. Ling Han's last smile was really too familiar to her, and she recognized him with a single look. This detestable guy. He had deliberately enraged her so that she could leave. Then, he would take advantage of the opening to open the great doors. By the time she came back to her senses, it was already too late. This was too despicable. The others also chased after her, their faces filled with shock, especially that Liang Dongkue. He had said that it was impossible to find this key, but he was immediately slapped with his own words. We were deceived by him. Everyone naturally came to their senses, but it was a shame that it was too late. On the other side, Ling Han revealed a faint smile. Song Lan, this little girl, was really smart. She had almost seen through him. Ling Han turned around and looked ahead. It was very simple and crude inside. A few pillars supported the weight of the great hall, and the ground was empty. Ling Han strode forwards. There was a table at the end of the great hall, and there was a book laid out on the table. Perhaps that was the key. He walked to the table and did not easily take the book, because this great hall had gone through too many years, and who knew how much this book had deteriorated. Thus, he was extremely careful. The book had no cover, and there was no name on the surface either. Ling Han used his divine sense as a tentacle and carefully turned a page. There were words on the second page. After Ling Han glanced at them a few times, he revealed an expression of surprise. This wasn't a cultivation technique, nor was it a celestial technique. Instead, it was a notebook that had been left behind by a predecessor. This person's battle prowess wasn't outstanding, and when he died, he was only sect master level, so it couldn't be considered that amazing. However, this person liked to study theory, especially regarding the limits of martial arts. Ling Han saw that according to this person's deduction, the limit of the foundation building tier was forming a second cornerstone of the celestial path, or even 3, and this wise man's deduction of the limits of the cauldron forging tier was 10 cauldrons. Above the heaven cauldron, whether it was 4 cauldrons or 5 cauldrons, they had already broken through their limits. However, in the eyes of this predecessor, 3 cauldrons was only the lowest requirement for breaking through to the core formation tier, and breaking through to core formation tier from 3 cauldrons, the path of martial arts had basically reached its end. Unless one ingested some heaven-defying celestial medicine, they definitely wouldn't be able to break through to the true self tier. 9 was the heaven and earth extreme, so if the extreme was broken, that was where the true limit lay. 10 cauldrons. Ling Han pondered for a moment. Throughout history, he had never heard of anyone who had cultivated to such a heaven-defying cultivation level. However, hadn't his 3 celestial foundations also broken through the impossible acknowledged throughout eternity? He secretly estimated that what limited a cultivator from reaching 4 cauldrons, 7 cauldrons and 9 cauldrons weren't heaven and earth, but rather oneself. Because the celestial cauldrons repelled each other, After reaching a certain extent, the repulsive force surpassed all else, and that was the limit of an individual. For him, forming the ninth cauldron was indeed a little stressful, but he had not used the power of living beings in the dimensions in his body, which also meant that there was indeed a possibility that he could further squeeze out his potential. He looked again, and this predecessor had not simply deduced the limits of each cultivation level, but also had a solution that he thought was feasible. For example, with regards to the foundation building tier, he had created a technique that could suppress the celestial foundation. In this way, it was possible to form a second celestial foundation. It was the same for the cauldron forging tier. He had also developed a technique which allowed the various celestial cauldrons to impede each other, thereby weakening the pressure on the new cauldron. The more Ling Han saw, the more astonished he became. This predecessor was practically a genius. Unfortunately, this wise man had died early, and had only lived for 8,000 years, and the theoretical lifespan of the sect master was 40,000 years. Even if the majority could not live to this age, 8,000 years was still too short a life. Ling Han surmised that it was because this wise man's research was too heaven-defying. So he had been targeted by the heavens, exerting internal demons on him, causing him to die young. This deduction wasn't without reason. When the predecessor deduced the limits of the minor advanced tier, he was already babbling nonsense. It was clear with a single glance that he wasn't conscious. Ling Han closed his notebook. If this thing spread out, it would probably cause a huge commotion. However, Ling Han believed that even if this notebook was known to everyone, how many people could really break the limit? In fact, even if he didn't have this kind of notes, Ling Han still had the thought of breaking through to 10 cauldrons. After all, although there were very, very few people who had reached the level of 9 cauldrons, counting the number of people in the North Heavenly Realm, there were probably around 10 people who had reached the level of 9 cauldrons. Was this still called a limit? Now, with the notes of this ancient sage, he had developed a technique that could allow the repulsive force of the celestial cauldrons to cancel out a portion of each other, greatly increasing the possibility of him forming 10 cauldrons. Fine, he would charge towards this 10 cauldrons that was possibly unprecedented. Ling Han searched around the large hall again and discovered a small transfer formation. In any case, there was nothing much to stay here for, so he entered into the transfer formation. A streak of light swept past, and he had already appeared in another place. This was a massive platform, and it was clearly located at an extremely high position, because there were clouds floating around it. Ling Han walked to the side, and when he looked outside he was surprised, because this platform was actually floating in the skies. Not only that, but this platform was also in a state of high-speed movement. It was so fast that even Ling Han couldn't catch up to it by flying on his tool. Thus, Ling Han didn't dare to fly off the platform and observe the situation as a whole. He walked slowly towards the center of the platform. This platform couldn't be considered big. At most, it could only be considered a garden. Then, someone dug it out forcefully and used some unknown method to allow it to fly in the air. Ling Han didn't walk very fast. There were no competitors here, so there was no need. However, no matter how slow he walked, this platform was only so big. Not long after, he arrived at the center of the platform. There was a sacrificial altar-like object that was carved from stone, and above the sacrificial altar was a black box that was sealed tightly. It was unknown what was inside. Ling Han placed his hand on it. Suddenly, he immediately felt something collide inside. He thought for a moment, then summoned the Primal Chaos Extreme Lightning Tower and shadowed it over the black box. If anything terrifying appeared, he could immediately suppress it with his imperial weapon. Then he opened the casket. He had just opened a crack in the casket when he saw a ray of light shoot out. The speed was ridiculously fast. Even if he was already prepared, the distance was too close, so he still couldn't react in time. Pooh! This light pierced through primal chaos chi and shattered the starlight screen, landing heavily on him. Ling Han was instantly sent flying. His vision darkened, and he almost fainted. However, in this instant, he also caught sight of a bolt of lightning that flew out of the black box. Celestial light. Ling Han thought internally. He really had not expected that he would actually unearth a celestial light from within a box. However, he immediately made the correct response. With a thought, the black light of illusion had already been shot out. Then, the primal chaos extreme lightning tower covered it. After doing all this, a powerful dizziness assaulted him, and Ling Han fainted. After an unknown amount of time, Ling Han slowly regained consciousness. He felt an agonizing pain in his chest, and it was indescribably painful. Fuck, this time it was really an unexpected failure. Ling Han forcibly got back to his feet and retrieved the primal chaos extreme lightning tower. With a sweep of his divine sense, he discovered that there was a bolt of lightning dancing madly inside, as if it was about to break through and rush out. Unfortunately, this was forged from origin gold, so how could it be an ordinary 2-star tool? No matter how it attacked, it was useless. A smile appeared on Ling Han's face. Though he had been ruthlessly struck, he had still obtained a streak of celestial light. This was not a loss. He looked down and saw that there was a deep wound on his lower abdomen that had almost severed him into 2 halves. Furthermore, the wound contained both the power of lightning and the air of slaughter, and was still continuously causing destruction in the wound, weakening his vitality. Ling Han hurriedly used his mystical power to suppress this foreign energy. Thankfully, he did not lack celestial medicines, and had also cultivated a saint-level cultivation technique, so it was not difficult for him to expel foreign energy. Moreover, he still had 6 flashes of lightning in his body. Although they all had different elemental alignments, they were all lightning after all, and had a certain degree of reference, allowing him to slowly find out what exactly the lightning that had injured him was made of. 7 days later, his injuries were all healed. However, he did not stand up. Instead, he continued to comprehend, because he discovered that there was a connection between the various bolts of lightning. Without a doubt, the first bolt of lightning that he had obtained was the strongest. It had the element of primal chaos, and was like the first bolt of lightning of heaven and earth, while the other bolts of lightning seemed to have evolved from it. However, the first bolt of lightning was incomplete, and the other bolts of lightning could be used to replenish it, improving its quality and reaching a stronger level. Now, Ling Han was deducing this possibility. 3 days later, he stopped. It was unrealistic to extract attributes from other bolts of lightning and then improve the primal chaos divine lightning. That was because Ling Han could not do it at all. Even if it was other lightning, it was comparable to the saint technique. Ling Han could refine the lightning, but it did not mean that he could understand the factors that formed the lightning. Thus, it was an impossible task for him to extract the missing parts of the primal chaos divine lightning from it and complete the replenishment of the primal chaos divine lightning. Unless he was presently a saint. Was there nothing that could be done? There was. Ling Han thought of a possibility, and that was to fuse all the lightning together, and with the primal chaos divine lightning as the core, refine it into a single bolt. Furthermore, after advancing into the core formation tier, wouldn't one only be able to retain one divine light? In this way, it would be from choosing 1 out of 10 to choosing 1 out of 2, and making a choice between the primal chaos divine lightning and the black light of illusion. However, it could not be carried out yet. Firstly, he had not thought of a way to fuse the celestial lights together, and secondly, the lightning he had grasped was not complete enough. Judging by what the primal chaos divine lightning was lacking, there were still 2 missing. Ling Han's eyes lit up. Coincidentally, if he cultivated to 10 cauldrons, he would still be missing 2 more celestial lights. All right, then he would go and find these 2 streaks of celestial light. By then, when the 9 bolts of lightning fused into one, the might of the primal chaos divine lightning would definitely increase greatly. He circled around the platform a few more times, wanting to see if there was anything else valuable. However, the platform was only so big, so he couldn't find anything even after searching a few more times. Forget it, he had already profited greatly. Ling Han flew on his tool and left the platform. Immediately, he saw the platform disappear from his sight at an astonishing speed. He flew downwards, passing through layers of clouds. After a long while, he finally landed on the ground. And this was still the demonic origin realm. That floating platform didn't take him to the ends of the world. Ling Han arrived at a city. He continued to search for clues about celestial light. There was no shortage of opportunities here. In fact, there were also many celestial lights, and their might was at least comparable to venerate tier-level techniques. Thus, among those outsiders that had not obtained the celestial light, there were some that had not broken through even after a long time. It was not that they could not, but rather that they were waiting for the celestial light. Ling Han entered various danger zones and experienced many dangers. He exchanged blows with a great many people and also obtained celestial lights. However, it seemed like his luck had suddenly turned bad. These celestial lights were not of the lightning element. Even if it wasn't lightning aligned, he couldn't waste it. Thus, Ling Han stored the celestial light into the primal chaos extreme lightning tower. In the future, he could gift it to the Empress, Hunyo, the large black dog, and the others. In the blink of an eye, half a year had passed. He did not obtain the lightning element celestial light, but Ling Han had almost cultivated 9 cauldrons to consummate level. Could not be helped. He had obtained too many celestial medicines and had refined them into alchemical pills. If he ingested one every day, how could his cultivation level not soar rapidly? There's news of celestial light again. Ling Han flipped through the information. This time it was the forest of light. There was a divine light dancing, and even in broad daylight, it could illuminate the skies, which was incredibly bright. Let's go take a look. He didn't know whether the divine light that appeared this time was celestial light, and whether it was lightning aligned, but since he had gotten the news, he naturally had to go and take a look. He set out, heading towards the forest of light. Half a day later, he arrived at his destination. The reason why the forest of light was so named was because there were large areas of glowing trees growing here. Even in broad daylight, flames of light could be seen soaring skywards, and at night, this place was even brighter. Ling Han strolled slowly, neither too fast nor too slow. Celestial light was too fast. Even if he ran at full speed, he would not be able to catch up to it. Thus, rather than running around randomly and possibly going in opposite directions, it would be better for him to relax and just treat it as a stroll. Ling Han walked slowly. There were those kind of glowing trees everywhere in this place. This light came from the leaves, and they were all of the same color. It was a gentle white light, and appeared very sacred. Ling Han plucked a leaf, yet discovered that the leaf soon lost its brilliance, and became no different from an ordinary leaf. This was quite interesting. He wandered aimlessly. This forest was very big, so who knew where that celestial light was? Who knew where it would suddenly appear from? Thus, Ling Han didn't mind, and walked casually. 1 day, 2 days, time passed quietly. Ling Han did not gain much. To say nothing of the fact that he had not seen the celestial light, he had not even seen any divine substance or celestial medicine. However, he did encounter a considerable number of wild beasts, and there were even true self-tier great beasts. Thankfully, his divine sense was sensitive, and when he discovered them, he circled around at the first instant. Otherwise, if he had directly crashed into them, he would either have to activate the heavenly Tao flames or shatter the token to escape, and there was no third possibility. He wasn't in a hurry. If he couldn't find the celestial light, he would battle with the wild beasts to temper himself. At noon on this day, he stopped and started a bonfire. He set up a piece of vicious beast meat, preparing to have a good meal. Not long after, the aroma of meat wafted out, causing Ling Han's appetite to stir. He mocked himself for being such a glutton. He listened attentively because he felt the ground tremble. There was presently someone rapidly approaching in his direction. A figure had already darted out. It was a fatty with a rounded figure, who was only 24 or 25 years old. "Brother, I'm sorry. Run quickly, there's a fierce beast behind us," the fatty called out to Ling Han through his divine sense. Ling Han faltered slightly and developed a favorable impression of this fatty. That was because when he was fleeing, he could still warn passersby. This kind of person was already very rare. Of course, the ferocious beast behind him had been drawn over by this fatty, so he was the main culprit. Hong long long, the ground trembled madly. Multiple trees fell, and a colossal creature also rushed out. This was an ironback bull. It was 30 meters long and 6 meters tall. It was completely black in color, as if it had been forged from divine metal. Its whole body was exuding a metallic luster. Fuck! Why aren't you running? The fatty had already run a distance away, but when he saw that Ling Han was actually still sitting where he was, he couldn't help but stop in his tracks. Seeing that Ling Han still didn't answer, he stomped his feet and actually ran back. The ironback bull charged over, its two sharp horns like supreme heavenly blades, crashing towards Ling Han. The fatty arrived and shot out a punch to greet the attack of the ironback bull. Pong! The fatty was instantly sent flying, but the ironback bull also slowed down and stopped. Fuck! I say, big brother, are you playing with me? Run! The fatty turned his head, and when he saw that Ling Han was still leisurely barbecuing meat, his face involuntarily turned green. He was no match for this ironback bull. Otherwise, there would have been no need for this fierce beast to chase after him. Furthermore, he did not want to cause others to die because of him, and that was why he had resolutely turned around to face the attack. But Ling Han was actually still barbecuing meat there. His fury was really going to kill him. At this moment, the ironback bull shook its head and became even more furious. It dug its hooves, then charged towards the fatty. Come chase your grandpa, fatty. The fatty crooked a finger, then broke into a run. In this way, he would be able to lure the ironback bull away, and Ling Han would naturally be safe. He was a very principled person. He would definitely not allow others to bear the consequences of his own actions. Pong! A loud bang rang out from behind him, as if something heavy had been sent flying. However, the fatty did not hear this. His speed had far surpassed the speed of sound, but after he had run a few steps, he realized that the ironback bull had not caught up to him, which caused him to involuntarily stop. He turned around to look, and his mouth instantly gaped open in shock. Ling Han was still sitting on the spot and barbecuing meat, while the ironback bull was sent flying several hundred meters away, leaving a deep mark on the ground. Could it be that it was that brat that had moved and sent the ironback bull flying? But it should be known that he was already 7 cauldrons, and his battle prowess could match an 8 cauldrons fierce beast. Yet he was no match for this ironback bull, but that brat had sent the ironback bull flying with a single punch. What kind of abilities did he have? Fuck! So you're a fierce person. The fatty walked over and clasped his hands in greeting. Sorry for the disrespect. I'm Xianxia. How should I address you, brother? Ling Han was completely focused on roasting the meat. Without even raising his head, he said calmly, Ling Han. This fatty had a good character, being able to come back to face danger in such a situation, which caused Ling Han to have a favorable impression of him. So he told him his real name. Xianxia was very familiar with Ling Han. He sat down beside Ling Han and said, I'm hungry. Can I have some? Ling Han smiled and used the saber to split the beast meat into 2. Then he took a piece and handed it to the fatty. Xianxia immediately began eating, as he asked, Brother Fierce Man, have you also come to search for celestial light? Ling Han thought for a moment, then replied, That's right. I advise you to give up. That celestial light is practically freakishly fast. It disappeared in a flash, and there is no way to catch up at all, the fatty said in a slightly slurred voice as he ate. A thought flashed in Ling Han's head, and he asked, You've seen it before? Yes, quite a few times, the fatty replied. Where did you see it? Ling Han asked again. In a small canyon. Because I was hunted by a fierce beast, I fled in. In the end, that fierce beast actually did not dare to chase me in. The fatty said, I walked around in the canyon for a while, and as soon as I came out, I saw that celestial light. To be honest with you, I too wanted to capture that celestial light, but in the end, I failed time and time again. Where is that canyon? It can't be that you want to take this celestial light, right? The fatty shook his head. Brother Fierce Man, I don't mean to pour cold water on you, but that celestial light is really too fast, and is not something that cauldron forging tier can reach at all. Ling Han smiled. It's all right. You only have to tell me where it is. I will go and try my luck. All right, I'll take you there, the fatty said. Seeing Ling Han look towards him, he shrugged. That place is not easy to find, so I'll take you there. All right. After the two of them finished eating, the fatty set out with Ling Han. After going around in circles and spending some time, they finally arrived at their destination. They saw that the entrance was really hidden. If they didn't search carefully, it would be extremely difficult to discover. I was also in a panic and didn't know where to go, so I just happened to barge in coincidentally, the fatty said, slightly embarrassed. Ling Han couldn't help but smile. Why are you always being hunted down by wild beasts? I don't know either. Zhang Yuxian shook his head and thought for a moment. Could it be because I have a lot of meat? Possibly. Ling Han strode into the canyon. Zhang Yuxian hesitated for a moment before following him. This was really a very small canyon. It was not more than 300 meters deep, and the mountain walls on either side were also very low, concealed by the tall trees. Since they were free now, the two of them began to chat. The fatty was very talkative, and was more so happy to share his embarrassing experiences, which caused Ling Han to laugh loudly from time to time. Right at this moment, Xiao, a ray of multicolored light flew over. It's here. Ling Han raised his head to look. This streak of light was astonishingly fast, circling above the valley. The eye technique was activated, and he could clearly see that this light was formed from lightning, but there was also a divine light flickering. Clearly, it was another lightning with a special element. A smile appeared on his face. His wait had finally ended. Brother Fierce Man, how do you plan to retrieve this celestial light? Zhang Yuxian asked. Ling Han smiled faintly and said, like this. The black light of illusion shot out, and the multicolored light in the sky immediately stopped, as if it had been frozen. Ling Han flew on his tool, easily drawing the multicolored light into the primal chaos extreme lightning tower. It was extremely simple. He looked at Zhang Yuxian, only to see that the fatty had already become completely dumbfounded. His mouth was half gaping, and his eyes were wide open. Ling Han smiled, turned around and walked out of the canyon. Only then did Zhang Yuxian come to his senses as if he had just woken up from a dream. He hurriedly set off in pursuit of Ling Han. Brother Fierce Man! Brother Fierce Man! He called out, his expression filled with admiration. You are really awesome. I concede defeat. I concede defeat completely. Ling Han suddenly stopped, thought for a moment and said, I will give you an opportunity, but do you dare to take it? Why wouldn't I dare? Zhang Yuxian was brimming with confidence. Who would be afraid of great opportunities? All right. Ling Han drew out a celestial light from the primal chaos extreme lightning tower and delivered it straight at Zhang Yuxian. Oh my goodness! Zhang Yuxian immediately cried out in pain. The celestial light had already penetrated into his body, causing him so much pain that he wanted to throw up blood. Though this celestial light was inferior to the primal chaos divine lightning, heptagold yang lightning, and so on, its might was still incredibly powerful. If that was not the case, why would those prodigies want to snatch it? At the very least, this was equivalent to a venerate tier-level technique. However, Zhang Yuxian also knew that this was a great opportunity. He hurriedly endured the agonizing pain of having his body pierced through by the celestial light, and used the celestial cauldron to trap the celestial light, then began to refine it. The celestial cauldron was definitely the sturdiest part inside a cauldron forging tier, because when there was really no other way, he could still use the celestial cauldron like a spirit tool and shoot it out. This was especially the case with the golden celestial cauldron, which was even sturdier than the 2-star divine metal. As for the tricolor glass cauldron, golden jade cauldron, and the like, they were even sturdier. Tong, tong, tong. Inside the celestial cauldron, that celestial light streaked out, wanting to break out of the cauldron. Meanwhile, Fatty Zhang gritted his teeth and endured. If he breathed a sigh of relief at this moment, he would miss out on this great opportunity. After a while, he gradually entered into an optimal state. Ling Han smiled and strode off. This canyon was extremely secluded. It was very safe for this guy to refine the celestial light here. He also found a safe place, then released the lightning-aligned celestial light. Once the black light of illusion shot out, it was immediately covered by the celestial cauldron, and he began to refine the celestial light. To Ling Han, refining the celestial light was already something that he could do proficiently with practice. 3 days later, he had succeeded. This was the evil-killing divine lightning. 9 celestial cauldrons, 9 streaks of celestial light. Now, he only had to cultivate another celestial cauldron, and then capture and refine a streak of celestial light. Then, he would be able to cultivate to the level of 10 cauldrons that had never been cultivated before. However, was it true that no one had ever cultivated to 10 cauldrons before? Ling Han was suspicious, because he now knew that a great many Imperial clan prodigies didn't have rankings in the Galaxy Network. In fact, they didn't even have Galaxy Network's account. There was definitely a supreme prodigy among them. Thus, some prodigies didn't even use the Galaxy Network, so what were some supreme prodigies worth if they didn't leave behind a legend of 10 cauldrons? One mustn't underestimate any ancestral king. That was an overlord that ruled over an era, the strongest in the world. How could it be that none of them had thought that a cauldron forging tier would be able to form 10 cauldrons? Could it be that none of them had thought of any way to decrease the repulsive power of the celestial cauldrons? He had never heard of it, but that did not mean that it did not exist. Ling Han didn't dare to be smug. Just like when he leaped over the celestial gate, didn't he also see a figure arrive at the primitive celestial gate? It's extremely likely that Origin, Myriad Dao, and the others have also cultivated the primitive celestial gate. The celestial cauldron that they forged must be of the same quality as mine, he murmured. Let's not worry about this first. I'll think about it after I finish cultivating to 10 cauldrons. Otherwise, everything will only be empty words. Ling Han kept an eye out for any news of the celestial light. Though he had already obtained a considerable amount, what he needed the most was still the lightning element. Unless there was really no other way, he would still try his best to wait. There was no news of the celestial light. However, there was a considerable amount of information about Feng Jixing, Songlan, and others. It was said that their battle prowess was unparalleled. Even among the native core formation tier cultivators of demonic origin realm, there were not many that could match them, possessing outstanding reputation. Even those true self-tier-old monsters had a whole new level of respect for them. Now, Feng Jixing was taking the lead, organizing the local and outsider cultivators to join forces, wanting to launch an assault on the Demon Abyss. The Demon Abyss was an extremely dangerous place. There were wild beasts everywhere, and what was even more frightening was the abyssal earth ants. Their bodies were as large as bulls, and there were tens of thousands of them in a single nest. Furthermore, their leaders were all at the level of the core formation tier. If they were ganged up on by such a swarm of ants, then even true self-tier elites could only die. Thus, the Demon Abyss had always been a forbidden area for living beings, and no one dared to barge in. However, though the abyssal earth ants were extremely frightening, the ant queen would produce a mysterious liquid. If it was used to temper one's body, it would allow the cultivator's body to undergo a complete transformation and become incredibly tough. Ling Han pondered for a moment before deciding to cultivate in seclusion instead of joining in on the excitement. He was getting closer and closer to the peak stage of 9 cauldrons. Next, he would have to charge to 10 cauldrons. Where would he find the time to go to the Demon Abyss? Moreover, his physique had already been tempered to a tough enough extent. Perhaps the ant fluid could help him evolve further, and that could only be considered icing on the cake. Ling Han calmed down and quietly cultivated. In just a month, he had reached the peak stage of 9 cauldrons. Next, it was the most difficult step, breaking through to 10 cauldrons. At the very least, Ling Han had never seen a person who could reach such heights. This was the cauldron forging tier's true peak. Throughout history, perhaps only a few people had reached such heights. Where there was absolute height, there would definitely be loneliness. Ling Han did not have any reference, and could only ponder on his own, advancing alone. He wasn't in a hurry to break through. Instead, he relaxed completely. Every day, he would drink tea and flip through his information to see if there was any information about the Empress and the others. 7 days later, a big piece of news came. Feng Jixing had already joined forces with an army, and was advancing towards the Demon Abyss. At this moment, Ling Han also started to attempt breaking through to 10 cauldrons. He channeled the techniques that he had obtained from that predecessor, and then began to nurture the core of the 10th celestial cauldron. Wang, the 9 great celestial cauldrons immediately released a force of repulsion, but as they collided with each other, it weakened considerably. Very good, Ling Han nodded internally. That predecessor was indeed a genius. He clearly had not formed 10 cauldrons himself, but the direction of his deduction was correct. However, even if he had this kind of method to reduce the repulsive force of the celestial cauldrons, when the 9 celestial cauldrons unleashed their might at the same time, this was practically a qualitative change. Pa pa pa. The celestial cauldron core that Ling Han had formed continued to shatter. 9 was the pinnacle of heaven and earth. It was as if the heavens did not allow the creation of 10 cauldrons. This was a suppression that surpassed power. Ling Han frowned. The research direction of that predecessor was correct, but he had still underestimated the resistance of heaven and earth. After all, that predecessor had not formed 10 cauldrons. Imagining things out of thin air was ultimately only theoretical. There were a great many problems that could only be discovered through practical experimentation. Wang. The 9 celestial cauldrons shook together, forming a powerful pressure that was like the myriad manifestations of heaven and earth. Under this kind of pressure, it was impossible to form 10th cauldron. The new core would be crushed the moment it was formed. Ling Han had no choice but to use the power of living beings in the dimensions inside his body. Otherwise, this was a mission that would never be completed. Endless fine power surged out, and every single power was negligible, but as a small amount gathered into a large amount, it also became a power that could not be underestimated. Ling Han cultivated a new core of the celestial cauldron. He wrapped it with the power of living beings, forming a barrier that resisted the suppression of the 9 celestial cauldrons. It had withstood. Ling Han revealed an overjoyed expression. Under the effects of the life force of the dimensions inside his body, as well as the methods of his predecessor, the newly born celestial cauldron core finally withstood the pressure. Quang! A sudden clap of thunder sounded out of nowhere. Dark clouds rolled out, and there was lightning flashing in the clouds. Cultivating 10 cauldrons was something that even the heavens envied. Ling Han stayed true to his heart. Though the heaven and earth was raging, it would not directly send supreme lightning to erase him. After all, he had not done any heinous deeds. Thus, the one who would really attack him should be the internal demon. As expected, after a bolt of lightning struck down, a golden figure immediately formed in Ling Han's mind. It brandished a large saber and slashed madly, wanting to shatter his mind and turn him into a soulless body. And Ling Han shouted the 6 characters Bright King Curse. Even if it was only a single word, and even if it wasn't the Buddhist race's true inheritance, it still had the effect of expelling evil and suppressing one's heart. With a roar, that golden figure was instantly weakened. Ling Han laughed loudly, and his divine sense took human form, greeting the golden figure. Pong! 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 They battled fiercely, and Ling Han continued to shout out the 6 characters Bright King Curse, continuously weakening the golden figure. In just a few minutes, this golden figure was completely killed by Ling Han. Ling Han was neither pleased nor shocked, and continued to stabilize the core of the 10th cauldron. It had just formed. If it was continuously compressed by the 9 great celestial cauldrons, it would ultimately shatter. After another 3 days and nights, Ling Han finally stopped. At this moment, the 10th cauldron had already been completely formed. This also meant that Ling Han had stepped into the level of 10 cauldrons that had perhaps never been reached before. How strong am I now? Ling Han murmured to himself. He was extremely curious about what level his current battle prowess had reached. Judging from the increase in power, I should have reached 2nd heaven of the core formation tier. Then, added with various secret techniques, I can battle against 3rd heaven of the core formation tier and even win. This wasn't as astonishing as he had imagined. After advancing to 10 cauldrons, his battle prowess had increased by a few levels. He could go to the Tong clan now. Ling Han thought internally. He had long since announced that he was going to the Tong clan to call them to an accounting. But in the blink of an eye, More than half a year had passed, and he still had not put it into action. Now was the time to realize his grand words. Ling Han set out on his own, heading towards the Tong clan manor. The Tong clan was a core formation tier force, and could be considered powerful even in the demonic origin realm. They occupied a city and were undisputed overlords. In this city, aside from the Tong clan, there were no other cauldron forging tier-level forces. There was a blank space. That was because the Tong clan did not allow the emergence of such a force. The moment any elite broke through to the cauldron forging tier, the Tong clan would move. Perhaps they would recruit him into the Tong clan through marriage, or they would directly cripple his cultivation level or even kill him. Though the Tong clan was so overbearing, no one dared to resist, because the Tong clan was really too strong. With 3 great core formation tier elites standing guard, this was comparable to several hundred cauldron forging tiers, and there were only foundation building tiers here. Even if they attacked together, they would be instantly destroyed. After Ling Han arrived in the city, he only asked around, and then found the Tong clan residence. The Tong clan was really too well known. Furthermore, because Ling Han had asked about them, he was instantly pointed at, as if he was a public enemy. Ling Han couldn't help but shake his head in shock. Just what great sins had the Tong clan committed, that they would actually incur the hatred of others to this extent? As long as they had the slightest contact with them, they would be considered great villains. He strode forwards, and arrived at the doors of the Tong clan manor. "Hey, who goes there? How dare you barge into the Tong clan manor?" There were 2 guards at the entrance, and they both had a curved saber at their waists. One of their hands was placed on the hilt of their saber. When they saw Ling Han walk over directly, the 2 of them drew half of their sabers at the same time, and shouted angrily at Ling Han. Ling Han humphed. "A mere lackey is worthy of asking my name? How dare you?" The 2 of them hurriedly rushed over, drawing their sabers and slashing. Ling Han snapped his fingers, and 2 gusts of wind swept past. The 2 of them instantly fell to the ground, their foreheads split open, blood gushing out. As if he had done something negligible, he strode forwards and walked through the doors. This scene was naturally seen by the people outside, instantly causing a commotion. They all called their friends over to watch, hoping that Ling Han would be a dragon that crossed the river and destroy the Tong clan. However, no one dared to barge into the Tong clan residence. They could only watch from the outside. After Ling Han entered through the main doors, there was a very long passage ahead of him. On either side there were gardens, and there were peculiar flowers and plants planted there. He had not taken a few steps when he saw a considerable number of people rush out from the other end of the passage. All of them looked fierce. This was natural. Usually it would only be their Tong clan that would be bullying others. How could they allow others to trifle with them? Charge! These people brandished their weapons and slashed towards Ling Han. Ling Han moved and shot out a punch, which turned into a terrifying wave that surged towards those people. "Stop!" At the same time, someone also shouted loudly, but it was already too late. Ling Han shot out a punch. Pung, pung, pung. Those who had charged over were all sent flying, as if they were straws. Pa, pa, pa. When these people landed on the ground, all of them had lost their vitality. Motherfucker! Only now did the person who had shouted earlier appear on the walkway. He cursed, then rebuked Ling Han furiously. "Brother Qian, our Tong clan naturally welcomes your visit, but why did you make a move to kill him?" At present, Ling Han had already disguised himself as he was in the Black Heaven Temple, and after the 3 core formation tiers of the Tong clan returned, they naturally informed their clansmen of Ling Han's appearance, and told them to receive Ling Han well when he came to visit. Hence, that person recognized Ling Han, and opened his mouth to stop him, but he was still a step too slow, because the 3 elites of the core formation tier had all commanded that Ling Han be well received. The members of the Tong clan could only swallow their anger and not fly into a rage when they clearly saw Ling Han commit murder. Ling Han shrugged and declared proudly, "To dare make a move on me, he deserved to die." The member of the Tong clan was furious, yet he merely clenched his fists tightly. After a while, he finally said, "Lord Clan Leader has been waiting for you for a very long time. Please follow me. Lead the way, Ling Han said lightly, naturally causing that member of the Tong clan to suffer another 10,000 points of damage. Ling Han was welcomed into the main hall. He saw that there were other guests in the Tong clan. Tong Xiao and Tong Shuhua were sitting on the main seats, and there were two men seated below them. One was a middle-aged man in his 40s, while the other was a young man in his 20s. To be able to stand as equals with the two members of the Tong clan, the strength of these two naturally had to be on the level of the core formation tier. Ling Han swept an eye over them with his eye technique, revealing a slightly surprised expression. The middle-aged man was indeed in the core formation tier, but the young man was actually also in the core formation tier. Though he had expected this, the 20-year-old core formation tier cultivator still gave him a shock. This was extremely young. Young friend Qian, you have finally arrived. Tong Xiao laughed loudly. Quick! Please sit! Please sit! He made a gesture of invitation, but he did not move, looking like he was high and mighty. He still had to put on some airs. After all, he was an elite at the late stage of core formation tier. Ling Han showed an expression of pride. At present, he was a young prodigy that was proud of his own talent. Naturally, he had to put on enough airs, and used a very arrogant posture to find a seat to sit down. Humph! A mere cauldron forging tier cultivator. What right do you have to sit in front of us? The young man who was the only one seated suddenly spoke up, casting a sideways glance at Ling Han with strong disdain. Your surname is Tong? Ling Han asked. The young man faltered, and subconsciously shook his head. The surname naturally could not be changed carelessly. Since your surname is not Tong, what business is it of yours? Ling Han retorted. He had come today to call them to account, so he was naturally here to act all arrogant and haughty. You! The young man immediately stood up, appearing to be unable to restrain his fury. Though he was a core formation tier cultivator, and his abilities could be considered extremely powerful, it was obvious that his mentality had not caught up. After all, he was still too young. Ling Cheng, sit down. The middle-aged man sitting beside him took a sip of tea as he called out calmly. Fourth uncle. The young man was defiant, and turned to look at the middle-aged man. They were also natives, and came from the Feng clan of the neighboring city. The middle-aged man's name was Feng Bao, and the young man's name was Feng Lingcheng. The Feng clan originally had 4 core formation tier elites, and added with the fact that Feng Lingcheng had also broken through recently, they now had 5 core formation tier elites. These abilities were naturally powerful, and they were also the overlords of the area. This time, the Feng clan and Tong clan were just about to form an alliance through marriage, and Feng Lingcheng was one of the parties involved, personally coming to propose marriage. As members of the Feng clan, they were naturally all haughty and conceited. Meanwhile, Feng Lingcheng had advanced into the core formation tier at such a young age, so he was naturally even prouder. Being rebuked by Ling Han like this, he immediately wanted to commit murder. Thankfully, he knew that this was the territory of the Tong clan, and only then did he force himself not to make a move. Meanwhile, Feng Bao said calmly, You are about to become a son-in-law of the Tong clan, and can be considered half a member of the Tong clan. If anyone speaks disrespectfully to you, I am sure that your Uncle Tong and father-in-law would not just sit by and watch. Being mocked by him like this, Tong Xiao and Tong Shuhua naturally didn't look too pleased. Hee. Don't worry, son-in-law. I won't let you suffer a grievance, Tong Shuhua hurriedly said. The current Tong clan was not as strong as it had once been. There was one less core formation tier elite, while the Feng clan had one more. It was 5 against 2. The gap was too wide. Thus, the Tong clan was naturally at a disadvantage before the Feng clan. Second leader, what do you mean by that? Ling Han spoke up, his expression cold. Second leader? Tong Shuhua's expression instantly darkened. Logically speaking, this address was indeed very clear about his status in the Tong clan, but they were not mountain bandits or thieves. This was too vulgar, wasn't it? Young friend Qian, this is Feng Lingcheng. Though he looks to be about the same age as you, he is an elite of core formation tier, he said solemnly. After all, he still had a very high opinion of Ling Han, because even a pseudo-emperor had a whole new level of respect for Ling Han. At present, Ling Han's cultivation level was still not very high, but there may be a chance for him to become a saint in future. This was considered a long-term investment. Ling Han smiled faintly and said, "So what if he is in the core formation tier? I've even seen a pseudo-emperor before. This show-off." Feng Lingqing was about to explode in fury. He could no longer hold himself back. Pointing at Ling Han, he said, "Ignorant brat, no matter who tries to persuade me today, it is useless. I am determined to teach you a good lesson." The Feng clan was far more powerful than the Tong clan, so he had no scruples. Meanwhile, Ling Han looked at Tong Xiao and Tong Shuhua and said with a smile, "Guys, there's such a lunatic messing around at home, and you're not going to interfere?" Tong Xiao and Tong Shuhua both wore awkward expressions. They were both a little displeased with Feng Lingqing for taking matters into his own hands, and also furious at Ling Han for being arrogant and insensitive. However, they couldn't afford to offend the Feng clan. Seeing that Feng Lingqing was already so furious, and Feng Bao was still drinking tea, it was obvious that he was deliberately indulging him. Thus, they didn't dare to stop him. This was good too. He would teach Ling Han a lesson so that he would restrain himself a little. "Humph. Now that there is no one to back you up, are you afraid now?" Feng Lingqing asked calmly, a hint of mockery in his voice. "You can be arrogant because of the two members of the Tong clan, and now these two people don't dare to back you up. Won't you have to cower like a pug?" Meanwhile, Ling Han looked left and right. Where did this mad dog come from? It's barking everywhere. So why isn't anyone chasing it out? "You're courting death," Feng Lingqing shouted loudly. At first, he had only wanted to teach Ling Han a lesson. After all, he wanted to leave some face for his future father-in-law. But Ling Han provoked him time and time again, causing his killing intent to rise. He strode towards Ling Han. Boom! The aura of the core formation tier surged, and swirls appeared in the surrounding air, exuding a terrifying intimidation. Pa pa pa! Teacups, vases, and other items in the hall exploded one after another. The might of core formation tier was no joke. Ling Han was calm and unperturbed. He had already advanced into 10 cauldrons, and his battle prowess was comparable to the third heaven of core formation tier. In fact, he could even kill him with a powerful move. What need was there for him to be concerned about a newly broken through core formation tier? How could it be that Feng Lingqing was as freakish as Feng Jixing and Song Lan? Once they advanced into the core formation tier, they possessed the battle prowess of third heaven? "I really don't know where you get your courage from." Feng Lingqing moved, and slowly delivered a palm strike at the top of Ling Han's head. "Nephew, please have mercy and spare this brat's life," Tong Xiao finally said. He didn't want Ling Han to die. This was a prodigious young man and an outsider at that. In the end, they would still have to leave this place, and once they left, what was a core formation tier cultivator worth? Thus, he definitely couldn't kill these outsiders who had astonishing backgrounds. Otherwise, wouldn't the sect master-level elites charge over to take revenge at the drop of a hat? Wouldn't that lead to the destruction of his clan? Yet Feng Bao spoke up and said, "Brother Tong, there is no need to have reservations. We have already reached an agreement with Feng Jixing. When we leave the Mystery Realm, we would be able to rely on the Longhua Holy Land." On the surface, these words were meant for Tong Xiao, but in truth, they were meant to support Feng Lingqing. So be it if he was killed. In any case, they could rely on the Holy Land, so who did they need to care about? Even an imperial clan would not trifle with a Holy Land unless there was absolutely need for it. After hearing Feng Bao's words, Feng Lingqing naturally had no more reservations. He revealed a cold smile, and his attack instantly sped up. Ling Han shook his head, and only then did he stand up. Then he delivered a palm strike at Feng Lingqing. Pong! Everyone saw a figure being sent flying, breaking through the wall at an extraordinarily fast speed, and disappearing from sight. And what caused their scalps to go numb was the fact that the person who was standing there unscathed was not Feng Lingqing, but rather Ling Han. Hiss! How was this possible? Whether it was the two core formation tiers of the Tong clan, or Feng Bao, they were all dumbfounded, as if they had seen a ghost. A mere cauldron forging tier was actually able to send Feng Lingqing, A cultivator of the core formation tier, flying with a single slap? That's right. Feng Lingqing had just broken through, and his cultivation level hadn't even completely stabilized yet. It was difficult for him to reach even first heaven-level battle prowess, but core formation tier was core formation tier. In terms of level, it was an iron rule of martial arts to crush the cauldron forging tier. However, it was clear that the iron rule had lost its effect. Pong! Feng Lingqing charged back, his expression filled with fury, as if he could burn even the heavens. Ling Han couldn't help but laugh in spite of himself, saying, "Are you stupid? There's clearly a hole that you crashed through here, yet you insist on ramming a new one in. Are you trying to show off your stubbornness? Or are you trying to help the Tong clan destroy their clan residence?" Feng Lingqing was so angry that he could not speak. Why was this person's mouth so toxic? "You will die an extremely ugly death." After a while, he spat out word by word. Ling Han shrugged and said, "I'm so scared. Die." Feng Lingqing charged over. This time, he used a powerful move. As he shot out a punch, a green light shot out and the light moved, actually turning into a green flood dragon. Could be clearly seen that the green flood dragon was covered with seals. That was condensed from boundless power, and was also imbued with high-level energy. Once it exploded, it would have the might of first heaven of core formation tier and above. Feng Bao couldn't help but nod and comment. "Lingqing is indeed worthy of being the prized son of our Feng clan. This azure dragon fist has already attained the true essence. Even if I use it, the might of my attack at the same cultivation level would only be SOSO. Though he had lost just now, outsiders all had powerful backgrounds, and had been bestowed with a great many rare treasures. Thus, it would not be strange for that brat to suddenly burst out with battle prowess that surpassed the first heaven of core formation tier. The problem was that rare treasures couldn't be channeled continuously, because for cauldron forging tiers, core formation tier level rare treasures were like bottomless pits that would suck the cauldron forging tier dry. Thus, Feng Lingqing used a powerful move, and there was a high chance that Ling Han's rare treasure could no longer be used. With this advantage, there was no need to speak of the result. Boom! That green flood dragon had already arrived, and coiled towards Ling Han. As long as it managed to wrap around him tightly, all the seals would explode, exploding with endless destructive power. Ling Han stood with his hands clasped behind his back, completely unconcerned. If the large black dog was here, he would definitely exclaim that Ling Han was showing off again. However, in the eyes of the Tong clan and Feng clan, this was not showing off, but rather that his abilities were inferior, and there was absolutely no way for him to resist. The green flood dragon wrapped around him, and immediately exploded. Boom! A terrifying energy surged out, directly shattering the main hall of the Tong clan. And this was still because the power had been concentrated on Ling Han and exploded. Otherwise, the entire Tong clan manor would have ceased to exist. Dust filled the air, and everyone naturally leaped out of the hall in the nick of time. If they were to be hit, wouldn't they be too battered and exhausted? Humph! You have suffered the consequences of your own actions. Feng Lingqing declared coldly, a mocking smile on his face. In everyone's eyes, sustaining such a blow, even a core formation tier cultivator would be severely wounded, what more a cauldron forging tier cultivator. However, when the dust gradually dispersed, they saw a person standing proudly among the ruins. It was Ling Han. All of a sudden, everyone looked disbelieving, staring dumbly at Ling Han as if they had seen a ghost. What was going on? Why was this guy completely unscathed? Ling Han smiled calmly. "Are you surprised?" Everyone nodded internally. This was not just a fucking surprise. It was practically a scare. "All right? Are you really a cauldron forging tier?" "Humph! I refuse to believe this. How many times will the rare treasure you have be able to protect you?" Feng Lingqing roared in fury, and charged towards Ling Han again. Ling Han parried casually, while his feet moved, leading Feng Lingqing to fight from south to north, and then from east to west. In a few moves, the whole Tong clan manor had turned into ruins. Both Tong Xiao and Tong Shuhua looked livid, their expressions as dark as could be. Feng Bao could only say awkwardly, "After Lingqing kills this despicable brat, the The Feng clan will definitely rebuild the Tong clan manor for the two of you. Was this a problem of reconstruction? Tong Xiao and Tong Shuhua's expressions were still livid. This was a matter of pride. The Tong clan had always been an overlord-like existence, and no one could shake their status. But now, their clan manor had already been demolished, and was witnessed by countless people at that. What face would the Tong clan have left? Feng Bao was also extremely embarrassed, and what he hated the most was how Ling Han could withstand a beating so well. Even now, he had not been killed. Otherwise, how could so many things have happened? And after such a long time, he still hadn't killed Ling Han. So Feng Lingcheng was naturally extremely embarrassed. Suspicion also arose in his mind. What rare treasure did Ling Han possess that could make him resist him for so long? A thought flashed through his mind, but he immediately rejected it. That was too ridiculous. How could a cauldron forging tier possibly possess battle prowess on the level of the core formation tier? This was practically a joke. He roared loudly, unleashing his full battle prowess, wanting to exert enough pressure on Ling Han to make him collapse. I can't be bothered to play with you anymore, Ling Han said calmly. He was no longer just parrying, but rather stretched out a hand to grab Feng Lingcheng. A murderous aura shot out, and Feng Lingcheng's movements instantly froze. When elites exchanged blows, how could they afford to make such a slight mistake? Ling Han had already grabbed hold of Feng Lingcheng's chest, and with a casual toss, Feng Lingcheng was sent flying, forcibly creating a long mark that was more than 30 meters deep on the ground. Fuck! Feng Bao and the members of the Tong clan were all petrified. How could it be that Ling Han had only been playing around with Feng Lingcheng all this while? Now that he was serious, Feng Lingcheng instantly collapsed. Brat, how dare you? Feng Bao charged out. His nephew had been defeated by a cauldron forging tier cultivator, so he was naturally embarrassed as well, especially in front of the members of the Tong clan. Thus, Ling Han definitely had to die. He was in the middle stage of the core formation tier, and his power had reached the third heaven. When this attack was delivered, its might was boundless. Ling Han channeled the great overarching heaven technique and exchanged blows with Feng Bao. In terms of power, he was indeed no match for the other, but in terms of celestial technique, he had really grasped too many. Hong! 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 The two of them exchanged blows. With the boost from the precious technique, Ling Han's battle prowess was not inferior to Feng Bao at all. The members of the Tong clan were already completely speechless. This cauldron forging tier cultivator was too freakish, wasn't he? He actually possessed the battle prowess of the third heaven of the core formation tier. He was boundlessly freakish. And was this Ling Han's full battle prowess? Of course not. After exchanging a few blows, Ling Han used the murderous aura attack. Under the wave after wave of attacks, even if Feng Bao's resistance was extremely strong, he was still hit repeatedly and gradually fell into a disadvantage. The members of the Tong clan were about to go crazy. Even one at the middle stage of the core formation tier and peak stage of the third heaven was no match for Ling Han. What kind of cauldron forging tier was this? Were the people of the outside world also freakish? The members of the Tong clan were all about to go crazy. How could there be such a powerful cauldron forging tier? Have you been injected with the blood of a saint? Ling Han's hands moved and shot out multiple flashes of divine light from within the celestial cauldrons. Ordinarily speaking, after one divine light shot out, it would definitely take a while for a second one to be fired out. But how many divine lights did Ling Han have in total? Excluding the black light of illusion, he had a total of 8 offensive divine lights. What kind of concept was this? At least it was equivalent to Saint technique. The primal chaos divine lightning was even comparable to the imperial technique. If 8 flashes were used in turn, there would be absolutely no gap. Of course, using it at the same time was even more frightening. It was equivalent to a young great emperor leading his 7 lackey saints to attack at the same time. Who could bear that? Boom! It was only a single strike and Feng Bao was done for. He was severely injured. How long had it been? 2 great core formation tier elites were defeated by Ling Han. Ling Han walked over and grabbed Feng Bao and Feng Lingcheng together. His expression was calm, but killing intent overflowed from him. At this time, the members of the Tong clan finally recovered. This was too shocking. Two great elites of the core formation tier had been easily defeated by Ling Han. How could they not be dumbfounded with shock? He, young friend Qian, please calm your anger, Tong Xiao hurriedly said. He was afraid that Ling Han would kill the two members of the Feng clan in a fit of anger. In that case, the Tong clan would definitely be implicated, and the Feng clan would take their anger out on them. Meanwhile, the Feng clan had three other core formation tiers, one in the middle stage of the core formation tier, one in the late stage of the core formation tier, and one in the consummate level of the core formation tier. To say nothing of the three of them attacking at the same time, as long as that core formation tier consummate level cultivator came, it would be difficult for him and Tong Shuhua to resist him even if they joined forces. Thus, the two members of the Feng clan definitely couldn't die. Oh, why didn't you tell them to calm down just now? Ling Han asked calmly. Tong Xiao wore an awkward expression. How could he dare to stop the Feng clan? He naturally would not say these words, and hurriedly said, "Young friend, in future, we will be a family, so please give me some face." "Sure." Ling Han nodded. Tong Xiao was instantly delighted. However, to his horror, he discovered that Ling Han had raised his foot and slammed it down. Pa! Feng Bao's head was smashed into mush. So what if you were a core formation tier cultivator? If your head was shattered, you would definitely die completely. No! Tong Xiao felt like the whole world was spinning, and his vision almost blacked out. He was dead. Feng Bao was dead. It was over now. Just how furious would the Feng clan be? You! Tong Xiao shouted angrily. He was also so furious that he wanted to kill someone. Ling Han smiled and placed one foot on Feng Lingqing's head. His warning could not be more obvious. If you dare to come over, I will also stomp on this person's head. Tong Xiao instantly stopped in his tracks, not daring to make another move. Release him, and everything can be discussed, Tong Xiao said solemnly. This was the prized son of the Feng clan. Although Feng Bao's death would also enrage the Feng clan, it wouldn't drive them crazy. However, if Feng Lingqing were to die, the Feng clan would definitely go berserk. Sure. Ling Han smiled and raised his foot. Though Ling Han had said yes, Tong Xiao felt an extreme sense of foreboding, because previously, Ling Han had only just said, okay, and in the next second, he had stomped Feng Bao to death. This brat was not playing by the rules at all. Pa! Ling Han resolutely stomped down, and blood sprayed through the air. Feng Lingqing, the prized son of the Feng clan, had also become a corpse. His blood was still spraying hotly. Tong Xiao's vision darkened again. A thought flashed through his mind. The Tong clan was finished. Even if Feng Bao and Feng Lingqing hadn't died by the hands of the Tong clan, Ling Han had been invited by the Tong clan. Moreover, the Tong clan hadn't saved them either, and they were only watching from the sidelines. How could they deny this responsibility? However, Tong Xiao was a wily old fox, after all. After being the clan head of the Tong clan for so many years, his brain was naturally vibrant. Young friend, this isn't your fault. Rather, it's the Feng clan's people who have gone too far, Tong Xiao said with a serious expression. He appeared as righteous as could be. What was going on? The members of the Tong clan were all dumbfounded. Why was Tong Xiao suddenly biased in favor of Ling Han? Big brother, Tong Shuhua couldn't help but say. Although he had always listened to his big brother, the matter today was something that he could not accept. Tong Xiao communicated through divine sense and said, now that things have come to this, we're definitely going to become hostile with the Feng clan. So why don't we just make the best of it and cling to this brat tightly? Just think, when this brat was in the cauldron forging tier, he was already able to kill a cultivator in the middle stage of the core formation tier. Into the core formation tier, would he still need to fear the Feng then, when he a clan? This is an outsider, and has an astonishing background in the outside world. As long as we firmly hold onto this line, what fear would we have of not having meteoric success in future? That's right. Tong Shuhua secretly clapped his hands. His older brother was indeed clever, directly turning a terrible incident into a situation that was beneficial to the clan. He looked at Tong Xiao with undisguised admiration. Young friend Qian, please leave with us. As long as I, Tong Xiao, am still alive, I will definitely ensure your safety, Tong Xiao said resolutely. Ling Han smiled. Are you telling the truth? Of course, my word is as good as gold. Tong Xiao patted his chest and said, even if I kill the third brother Tong? Ling Han asked again. What do you mean? The members of the Tong clan didn't understand. Third brother Tong was naturally Tong Yongning. He had died at the hands of that evil criminal, and he had even deliberately sent someone back to report the news. He was extremely detestable. Hee, young friend, don't joke around, Tong Xiao said. Although he was smiling, he was suppressing his anger. 2 core formation tiers of the Feng clan had been killed. He was already having enough of a headache, and now Ling Han had brought up Tong Yongning's matter in front of him. Wasn't this adding fuel to the fire? Ling Han shook his head and said, although I like to joke around, it depends on the person. With you guys? I'm not interested. Brat, don't be too arrogant, Tong Shuhua shouted harshly. He couldn't hold himself back any longer. Come, take a look at this young master's true appearance. With a thought from Ling Han, he immediately put on his disguise. What? Fuck. Motherfucker. The members of the Tong clan were instantly enraged. Wasn't this the culprit who had killed Tong Yongning? Realization dawned on everyone. How could there be so many freaks in this world? This was a cauldron forging tier that had the ability to kill a core formation tier elite. As it turned out, the two were the same person. It's you. Tong Xiao finally understood why Ling Han didn't give him any face. He was clearly here for revenge. Ling Han laughed loudly. Are you surprised? Shocked. There was no surprise, only shock. All the members of the Tong clan glared furiously at Ling Han. This bastard, not only had he killed one of their own, he had also laid a huge trap for them and dragged in a great enemy like the Feng clan. Good. 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 Tong Xiao said to the heavens, a baleful expression on his face. I swear, if I don't kill you, I won't be human. Ling Han smiled. Then you won't have the chance to be human in future. Die. Tong Xiao pounced quickly, charging towards Ling Han. He was in the late stage of the core formation tier, and his battle prowess soared to the 6th heaven, far surpassing Ling Han. Faced with such an elite, even Ling Han didn't dare to face him head-on. He used the imminent skyline, and that was to bully Tong Xiao, who hadn't grasped a profound movement technique. As he dodged the others' attacks, he continued to deliver fatal blows at the members of the Tong clan. Ling Han didn't hold back at all. One only had to look at how much the people in the city hated the Tong clan, and one would know just how arrogant and domineering the members of the Tong clan were usually. Thus, there was no need for him to be merciful. Stop! Stop! Tong Xiao roared in fury as he gave chase. Evil villain! Tong Shuhua also joined the battle. In the area, only the two of them were strong enough to stand against Ling Han. However, Ling Han didn't dare to face these two people head-on at all. His battle prowess was indeed superior to Tong Shuhua, but Tong Shuhua was a core formation tier elite after all, so he still had some abilities. He temporarily didn't want to waste time on Tong Shuhua. He continued to attack. In truth, there was no need for him to directly hit them. The barrage of murderous aura shot out, and the members of the Tong clan collapsed one after another. Great! Outside, everyone was watching to their heart's content, wanting nothing more than to clap and cheer. However, looking at Ling Han's expression, it was clear that he was no match for Tong Xiao. Thus, in order to avoid being called to an accounting in future, they suppressed their excitement and simply roared in their minds. There were quite a few clansmen of the Tong clan, but they could not withstand Ling Han's killing. Furthermore, because the Tong clan manor had previously been blasted into ruins by Feng Lingcheng, there was no place for them to hide now. They were all standing very conspicuously, and were practically living targets. In just a few minutes, only 2 members of the Tong clan were still alive. Tong Xiao and Tong Shuhua. Ah! Tong Xiao and Tong Shuhua both roared at the sky. This was practically exterminating their entire clan. They no longer needed to worry about the Feng clan, because the Tong clan was already finished. What need was there for them to care about the fury of the Feng clan? Ling Han looked coldly at Tong Shuhua. there was still one more person, and this was someone that he had the ability to kill. Tears of blood were already streaming from Tong Xiao's eyes. Previously, he had still been filled with ambition, but now, there were actually only 2 people left of the massive Tong clan. He was filled with hatred, and his fury soared to the heavens. He wanted to kill Ling Han 10,000 times. Freeze! He did not hesitate to expend his mystical power, which he endlessly released from his body, freezing the air in the surroundings. In this way, it was as if space had become extremely muddy. Movement was filled with obstruction, so speed naturally decreased drastically. This consumed an exorbitant amount of mystical power, but Tong Xiao only had one thought in his mind at this moment, and that was to kill Ling Han. How could he care about anything else? Black light of illusion. Ling Han waved his hand proudly. Tong Xiao faltered for a moment before falling into an illusion. His expression alternated between anger and delight, and it was unknown what he was experiencing. With his pause, the mystical power in the air lost his control, and naturally began to dissipate. Ling Han looked at Tong Shuhua with a sharp gaze, as if he could see through people's hearts. Tong Shuhua couldn't help but feel astonished. Why was there suddenly no reaction from Big Brother? He was only at the early stage of the core formation tier, and his battle prowess was only at the first heaven. He was no match for Feng Bao at all. However, Feng Bao had already been obliterated by Ling Han, so what was he worth? I already said that I would come collect this debt. Ling Han walked towards Tong Shuhua at a slow pace. Big Brother! Big Brother! Tong Shuhua called out, his voice filled with terror. However, it was as if Tong Xiao had become an idiot, completely ignoring him. He was extremely terrified. What could he do? Hee. Even if you scream your lungs out, no one will come save you, Ling Han said with a smile. Why did these words sound so strange? Tong Shuhua retreated continuously. He did not dare to face Ling Han's sharpness head-on. Using the imminent skyline, Ling Han took a step forward at an astonishing speed. In an instant, he had already arrived in front of Tong Shuhua. Tong Shuhua's expression changed drastically, and he hurriedly threw a punch at Ling Han. 18 Arhat Palm. Ling Han smiled and unleashed the demonic monkey fists. Pong! With a single punch, Tong Shuhua was sent flying, and all the bones in his arms were shattered. Ah! Tong Shuhua roared loudly. He was burning his celestial core to forcefully extend his life. Right now, he only had one thought, and that was to hold on until his older brother woke up. After combusting the celestial core, his injuries immediately recovered, and he returned to his prime condition. Right at this moment, he heard a roar from Tong Xiao. He had broken free from the illusion. Damn brat! He compressed the air again, restricting Ling Han's speed. Ling Han smiled faintly, and still shot out a flash of the black light of illusion. After such a short while, the black light of illusion could naturally be used again. Tong Xiao was hit again, and entered into the illusion again. Fuck you! Tong Shuhua was rendered speechless. It wasn't easy for him to hold on until his older brother came back to his senses. However, with a roar, his older brother had once again become a blockhead. This made him want to vomit blood. Could he burn his celestial core again? He couldn't. I've already told you. Even if you scream your lungs out, you won't be saved, Ling Han said calmly. Tong Shuhua gritted his teeth and said, You can be as proud as you like now, but you killed a member of the Feng clan, so the Feng clan will definitely not spare you. You have to know that the Feng clan has a core formation tier consummate level elite, and you are not a match at all. Ling Han was completely unconcerned. He shrugged and said, Consummate level of the core formation tier? When I advance into the core formation tier, I'll be able to suppress him with one hand. If it was another person, Tong Shuhua would definitely reprimand him as a pipe dream, because when the early stage of the core formation tier was compared with the consummate level of the core formation tier, the gap in battle prowess was not just a little bit, but rather completely one-sided. However, Ling Han was far too freakish. Right now, he was only at the cauldron forging tier, yet he possessed battle prowess at the 3rd heaven or even the 4th heaven of core formation tier. That being the case, what would happen after he advanced into core formation tier? How much could one increase their battle prowess by advancing a major tier? Thus, it wasn't impossible that Ling Han would be able to rival a core formation tier consummate level elite by then. Are you in enough despair? Ling Han asked. You don't even have a chance for revenge. So are you filled with so much hatred that you want to destroy the world? However, you can ask the people in the surroundings. Which one of them isn't filled with so much hatred that they want to devour the flesh and blood of your Tong clan? In the past, you guys only wanted to have fun, so you used the large ship to crush me. Hee. As long as you had the slightest bit of restraint, it would not have led to today's calamity. Ling Han said calmly, this evil karma that you have sown is the consequence of your own actions. Tong Shuhua looked around, and though not a single person spoke, there was hope and fury flickering in their eyes. They hoped that he would die, as well as a fury that would burn him to death. He had nothing to say. Just like Ling Han had said, as long as the members of the Tong clan behaved with the slightest bit of restraint, they would not have trifled with Ling Han in the past, and would not have caused such trouble today. I'll send you on your way. Ling Han charged over and delivered a palm strike at Tong Shuhua. I'm going to drag you down with me. Tong Shuhua roared. He unleashed his full power, completely ignoring Ling Han's attacks. He was going to drag Ling Han down with him. In his dreams, Ling Han raised his hand and shot out a bolt of lightning. Pa! Tong Shuhua was instantly hit, and smoke rose from his chest. He had almost been struck straight through. However, though he had not died, he was already severely injured, and was continuously throwing up blood from his mouth. Ling Han sent out another palm strike. Though Tong Shuhua tried his best to block it, it was like a mantis trying to stop a chariot. Pong! With a single strike, Tong Shuhua was completely dead. Great! Good kill! He should have died long ago. Seeing Tong Shuhua die, the people in the surroundings finally couldn't help but cheer. For a long time, the Tong clan was like a great mountain that was pressing down on their heads, deciding their life and death, and they could only be bullied by them. Now, the originally arrogant Tong clan only had Tong Xiao left, so how could they not be overjoyed? Ling Han glanced at Tong Xiao, then said to the people around him, disperse. This guy won't die for a while. Tong Xiao had only fallen into an illusion, and had not become an idiot. Faced with an attack, he would still instinctively counterattack. Thus, in a situation when there was a very wide gap in battle prowess between the two of them, Ling Han had absolutely no confidence that he could kill Tong Xiao. However, this didn't matter. Once he advanced to the core formation tier, Tong Xiao would definitely die. Ling Han clenched his hand into a fist, and 8 flashes of divine light of lightning shot out at the same time, striking towards Tong Xiao. As expected, Tong Xiao was still in the illusion, but the instincts of a cultivator were still present. In the illusion, this kind of attack had also been manifested. Immediately, he struck out with both palms, greeting those 8 streaks of divine light. Boom! With a loud bang, the 8 streaks of divine light were all dispersed. Ling Han sighed upon seeing this. The gulf between their cultivation levels was far too great. Even after unleashing 8 flashes of divine light, he still couldn't cause much damage to Tong Xiao. And after this attack, Tong Xiao also struggled out of the illusion. He glared angrily at Ling Han, his eyes spitting fire. In the Tong clan, he was the only one left. Tong Xiao, I will leave your life for now. I will return to retrieve it. Ling Han laughed loudly and flew away on his tool. After Tong Xiao chased for 2 steps, he soon stopped in his tracks. Firstly, he couldn't catch up at all, and secondly, even if he did, so what? The other party could send him into an illusion with a wave of his hand. He pondered for a moment, then decided to go to the Feng clan. Now that he was all alone, he was naturally unafraid of the Feng clan's revenge. On the other hand, only the Feng clan had to guard against him going crazy and going all out against them. Thus, he could go to the Feng clan, and have the Feng clan join forces with him to hunt down Ling Han. Otherwise, he alone would not be able to do anything against Ling Han. There were a great many places here that did not allow flight. As long as he entered into that kind of place, then if the core formation tier consummate level elite made a move, and the core formation tier late-stage elite intercepted him, Ling Han would definitely be unable to escape. With this in mind, he immediately leaped up and did not turn around to take another look. Ling Han flew away. Although he hadn't exacted revenge yet, Tong Xiao was the only one left. Moreover, he still had to endure the torture of recalling his clan having been exterminated day and night. These days were naturally torturous. It wouldn't be an exaggeration to say that he was better off dead than alive. He arrived at a city and paid attention to the clues of celestial light. However, he had already swept through many dangerous places before, so whatever celestial light he could find, he had naturally found long ago. Now, he could only wait for those ancient sites that had been sealed off to open. Who knows, there may still be celestial light. However, to be so coincidental that he just happened to find a lightning element, the difficulty level would be higher. A dozen over days later, the news came. The army that had swept through the demon abyss was actually progressing smoothly, destroying a swarm of ants, and retrieving a great amount of precious ant fluid, celestial medicine, and divine metal. At present, the coalition army was just about to penetrate deeply to expand the results of their battle. It was said that someone had seen what was suspected to be celestial light. A thought flashed in Ling Han's head, and he decided to take a look. He set off for the demon abyss, and after walking for a few days, a massive abyss appeared ahead of him. Black-colored gas soared into the skies, manifesting into all sorts of shapes and forms, but they were all incredibly hideous, intimidating anyone who saw them. Ling Han stretched out his head to take a look and frowned slightly. This abyss was like a valley of death, filled with boiling air of death, which made him instinctively feel disgusted. Martial artists cultivated and refined the energy of heaven and earth, turning it into their own mystical power to strengthen their life force. Thus, unless one cultivated some kind of evil cultivation technique, they would definitely detest this kind of place to the extreme. If there was celestial light here, would it be lightning element? Ling Han was doubtful, because lightning was the power of heaven and earth to deliver punishment. It was the strongest and most intense power, so would it appear in such an abyss? He hesitated for a moment, but still decided to go down and take a look. He had already arrived, so it was naturally impossible for him to retreat. Furthermore, as long as it was a celestial light, even if he didn't want it, he could save it for those close to him. Ling Han looked for a path to descend into the abyss. Flying on a tool was not possible here. The black chi that was rising was filled with corrosive power, and could also cause great damage to a cultivator of the core formation tier. Thus, there was no need to take it head-on. Not long after, he found the way down. Ling Han suddenly stopped in his tracks. He felt like he was being stared at, but on second thought, he didn't take it to heart and continued forwards. He still had the trump card, the heavenly Tao flames, in his hands. Even against a true self-tier cultivator, it was not that he would not be able to fight back. It was just that he wanted to temper himself, so he had not used it all this while. But this did not mean that he did not know how to use it. After he disappeared, for people walked out from afar. Tong Xiao was accompanied by 3 other men. The oldest was already in his 60s, while the other 2 were also in their 50s. As expected, this brat has come here, Tong Xiao said coldly. Though Ling Han had already disappeared, his gaze as he looked ahead was still filled with killing intent. The other 3 were Feng Clan's 3 core formation tier elites, and they were Feng Shaolin, Feng Kuan, and Feng Jian. Feng Shaolin's cultivation level was the highest, and he was already at the consummate level of the core formation tier. To dare to kill the prized son of our Feng clan, we must make him pay with his life, Feng Shaolin declared balefully. This brat has entered into the abyss, and there is no way to fly there. Unless he sprouts wings, he would not be able to escape, Tong Xiao said coldly. Chase! The 4 of them turned around and followed the path that Ling Han had descended. Previously, they had not made a move because they feared that Ling Han would fly away on his tool. But the moment Ling Han entered into the abyss, he would be trapped. However, when the 4 of them followed the steep mountain path all the way into the abyss, there was still no sign of Ling Han. Where is he? The 4 of them frowned. Logically speaking, they had only been left behind for a short while, so it should not have been to the extent that they had lost track of their target. Continue the chase. Feng Shaolin humphed and took the lead. Feng Kuan and Feng Jian hurriedly followed. Meanwhile, Tong Xiao swept his gaze over the surroundings before setting off. When the figures of the four people disappeared, a flash was seen in the air, and Ling Han appeared. So it is Tong Xiao. Those three should be the Feng clan's core formation tier elites. Heh, now you guys are hunting me down. But when I capture the last lightning-aligned celestial light and refine it, I'll begin to charge towards the core formation tier. At that time, we'll see if you guys will be hunting me down, or if I'll turn around and hunt you guys down. Ling Han chose a different direction and flew away. However, not long after he left, Tong Xiao and the three members of the Feng clan surprisingly returned. That despicable brat was hiding here just now. Tong Xiao was holding a jade-colored toad in his hand, and he was facing the direction where Ling Han had just disappeared. This was a tracking treasure that he had paid an exorbitant price for. He had deliberately obtained it after the destruction of the Tong clan, and it was finally useful. This brat should have some means to hide his tracks. Thus, after chasing for a while, we have to relocate him. The four core formation tier elites nodded one after another, and set off in pursuit of where Ling Han had disappeared. Their speed was extremely fast, but every once in a while, they would have to stop to confirm the direction of Ling Han's location. Sometimes, when Ling Han turned around, they would take a wrong path and have to circle back and relocate a few times. Thus, though they were traveling at full speed, they had not managed to catch up to Ling Han all this while. They merely followed behind him. However, Ling Han didn't know that there were four pursuers behind him. He ran as fast as lightning and only stopped after running for half a day. He started a fire, planning to eat first. He sat down as he focused on grilling the food. He had always been very serious when it came to food. Not long after, the barbecued meat released a fragrance, which made his appetite stir. Ling Han hadn't taken a bite yet, but his divine sense sensed that four auras were rapidly approaching at an extremely fast speed. He had not even finished this thought when four figures appeared. Tong Xiao and the three members of the Feng clan. Brat, I've found you. Tong Xiao immediately shouted harshly and charged towards Ling Han. He was filled with extreme fury towards Ling Han. With this pounce, he was as fast as a streak of light, his might soaring to the heavens. Ling Han shot out a murderous aura attack, slightly affecting Tong Xiao. Then, with a leap, he calmly dodged. The three members of the Feng clan were all shocked. They had heard of how strange Ling Han was from Tong Xiao. However, even though the Tong clan had indeed been killed by Ling Han, they still found it hard to believe that a measly cauldron forging tier cultivator could actually be as powerful as this. This was illogical and had broken their understanding. When it came to things that surpassed one's own understanding, the first thought of an ordinary person would definitely be to deny it and think that it was fake. The three members of the Feng clan were no exception either. However, when they saw that Tong Xiao had suffered a blow, and seeing was believing, they finally became serious. Though they had not seen Ling Han's battle prowess yet, this kind of miracle was enough to shock them. Guys, what are you standing around for? Hurry up and attack. Tong Xiao shouted loudly. In any case, he was all alone right now, so he didn't care about his attitude toward the three members of the Feng clan at all. Feng Shaolin nodded. Move! The three of them leaped out, encircling Ling Han. Tisk, so many outside helpers, Ling Han said calmly, yet broke out of the siege without the slightest hesitation. Feng Kuan and Feng Jian were still fine, but Feng Shaolin was too strong, and the aura he exuded made even him feel a baleful pressure. This should be an old monster that had reached the consummate level of the core formation tier, and his battle prowess was at least 7th heaven. Right now, Ling Han's battle prowess was only at the 4th heaven. In fact, he was even weaker than Tong Xiao, let alone Feng Shaolin, who was an old monster at the consummate level of the core formation tier. Do you think you can escape? Feng Shaolin sneered. He had already made his move, so how could he allow a cauldron forging tier cultivator to escape? Then just keep your eyes open and watch me, Ling Han said earnestly. Fuck. Even if Feng Shaolin had a high status and did not show his emotions on his face, when he heard these words, he could not help but want to curse. However, what was the point of bickering with a junior? He delivered a palm strike, intending to blast Ling Han into smithereens. Black light of illusion. Ling Han didn't make any obvious movements at all, and with a single thought, Feng Shaolin was already hit. His body stiffened, as if he was an idiot. In this way, a gap instantly appeared in the encirclement. Ling Han used his movement technique and calmly broke out of the siege. Tong Xiao was both furious and resentful. He had already told these three people quite a few times that Ling Han had 2 trump cards that allowed him to influence others soundlessly, and they were still fucking unconcerned about this. Come to think of it, against the barrage of murderous aura and the black light of illusion, unless one had cultivated a special divine sense secret technique, it was useless whether one was prepared or not. Chase! He took the lead and set off in pursuit of Ling Han. Feng Kuan and Feng Jian hesitated slightly, then followed closely behind, and after a while, Feng Shaolin also came back to his senses with a fierce roar, and followed behind Feng Kuan and Feng Jian. He was incandescent with rage. As an elite at the consummate level of the core formation tier, he had actually been struck by a cauldron forging tier. This was a great humiliation, and it caused him to fly into a humiliated rage. Ling Han took the lead, with Tong Xiao and the others behind him. They formed a straight line. He naturally would not turn around to accept the challenge, and tried his best to make use of the terrain to throw off his pursuers. The terrain of the abyss was extremely complicated. There were tall, sharp rocks scuttling out of the ground everywhere, blocking the way, and they had to circle around. Thus, this gave Ling Han a chance to shake off his pursuers. He circled around, and after a long while he finally managed to throw off his pursuers. However, before he could even catch his breath, Tong Xiao and the others had already returned. Fuck, had they developed a dog's nose? He hurriedly broke into a run again, and once again used the terrain to throw off his pursuers. This time, he continued to run for a very long time before stopping, but he had not rested for too long, when he saw Tong Xiao and the others appear once more. Ling Han had no option but to run again. These 4 people definitely possessed some kind of tracking spirit tool, or else they wouldn't have caught up so quickly. Moreover, he clearly saw the 4 people leave and choose the opposite direction. So how could they catch up so quickly? He had solved a mystery, but this could not solve the problem of his pursuers. No matter how far Ling Han ran, or how many detours he took, he was still caught up to. The only difference was how long it would take. Humph, when I break through to the core formation tier, I'd really like to see who would be hunting whom. Ling Han also became ruthless. Come and give chase. His mystical power was endless, and he wanted to see who would be able to last longer. He calculated the time. Every time, he would run until the sun rose before stopping. In this way, he would be able to calmly cultivate, while Tong Xiao and the others would have to use this time to catch up to him. Otherwise, the distance between them and him would become farther and farther. In this way, he could continuously replenish the mystical power he had expended, but Tong Xiao and the others could not. They could only depend on the alchemical pills they ingested. At first, Tong Xiao and the others were still very determined, not concerned about recovering their power, and pursued him relentlessly. However, after a few times, they had no choice but to stop to cultivate, replenishing their power. Otherwise, even if they really caught up to Ling Han, it would also be a huge drain on their power, and it was hard to say who would be the one killed. In this way, Ling Han was left with a large amount of blank time, and he could take time out to search for celestial light. However, this demon abyss was incredibly dim, and there were even powerful, ferocious beasts lurking around, so it was indeed dangerous. Thankfully, the area he was presently walking in had all been swept by Feng Jixing and the other extermination troops. The great vicious beasts had already been killed, and the occasional few that slipped through the net were not all that strong. Under this kind of pursuit, Ling Han shockingly discovered that his cultivation level was improving very quickly. The greater the pressure, the tougher his willpower would be, and this had instead forced out all his potential. Fine, if he could advance into the core formation tier a few months in advance, then before he killed Tong Xiao and the others, he would first have to thank them. Ling Han thought internally. Xiao, Xiao, Xiao. His figure darted around like a shuttle. Who goes there? When he scrambled out of a forest of rocks, he saw that there were actually a dozen over people ahead of him. With a glance, he could see that they were all very young handsome men and beautiful women, and a considerable number of them looked familiar to him. Ling Han! A low roar rang out, and Feng Jixing had already charged over. TSK, what a coincidence. He had actually caught up to Feng Jixing and his army. Of course, these people were definitely just a small army, and there were no old monsters in the true self tier. You damn thief! Feng Jixing shouted. He threw a punch, and the power of his fist turned into 7 treasured swords that shot towards Ling Han. At that time, Feng Jixing and the other prodigies had battled fiercely over the eggs laid by the white snake. Unexpectedly, however, Ling Han had managed to obtain 7 eggs before them. In Feng Jixing's eyes, Ling Han was naturally a thief. Ling Han frowned upon hearing this. With his current battle prowess, he could already rival Feng Jixing. However, there were still pursuers behind him, and they were about to catch up to him. Thus, how could he have the time to tangle with Feng Jixing? Hence, he shot out a murderous aura attack, and taking advantage of the moment when Feng Jixing was startled, he had already flown past. Feng Jixing came back to his senses and immediately roared, "Coward! Since you dare to be a thief, why don't you dare to fight me?" Not only did he roar, he even used his divine sense to transmit a message into Ling Han's mind. Fuck! Ling Han couldn't help but curse in his heart. He really wanted to turn around and slap Feng Jixing, but he wouldn't let his emotions affect him. With a humph, imminent skyline unfolded, and his speed was extremely fast. In any case, there would be plenty of chances to beat this guy up in the future, so there was no need to rush things. Feng Jixing didn't give chase. Ling Han had too many tricks up his sleeve, and if he was intent on fleeing, even he wouldn't be able to catch up. "Humph! You don't even dare to fight me," he declared proudly. It could be said that this was the proudest time in his many exchanges with Ling Han. Ling Han didn't even dare to battle him. Of course, in front of Brother Feng, it would be strange if Ling Han dared to fight. Immediately, someone bootlicked. That's right. When Brother Feng was in Cauldron Forging tier, he was the top elite in North Heavenly Realm, and now that he has just advanced to the level of Core Formation tier, his pure power has reached the battle prowess of Third Heaven. In future, he too would definitely be the top elites of Core Formation tier. Though that brat is afraid to battle, it is also a wise move. Otherwise, he would only be courting death. Everyone discussed among themselves, all of them feeling that this result was not unexpected. Feng Jixing was really that strong. Only Song Lan glanced at Prosperous Heaven, and the latter shook her head slightly at her. The two women were both incredibly intelligent, and had no lack of understanding of Ling Han. Would this man be afraid of a battle? In the past, when the various core formation tiers battled, he dared to interfere, so how could it be possible that he would cower now? Xiao, 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 Xiao. Right at this moment, 4 figures leaped over from the distance, and then stopped. One person used his mystical power to condense water vapor, which turned into a mirror. Then, it manifested into the figure of a man, and said to everyone, "Have you guys seen this person before? It wasn't this Ling Han?" "Yes," someone nodded. Feng Jixing frowned, and said, "Clan leader Feng, do you have a grudge against Ling Han?" So this person's name was Ling Han. It was only now that Tong Xiao and the others found out. They didn't know what they were feeling. After chasing him for so long, they still didn't know Ling Han's name. Feng Shaolin didn't dare to put on airs in front of Feng Jixing. Feng Jixing's talent was already astonishing enough, and he also had a holy land behind him. Thus, he nodded and said, "This brat killed a member of our Feng clan." He didn't say that Ling Han had actually killed 2 of their core formation tier cultivators. This was too humiliating. So that was the case. Feng Jixing pointed in the direction that Ling Han had fled in, and said, "He ran over there." "All right." Feng Shaolin nodded, and together with Tong Xiao and the others, they set off in pursuit of Ling Han. With their departure, a momentary silence fell. So Ling Han didn't linger in battle because there were pursuers behind him, someone whispered after a while. These words were very soft, but Feng Jixing still heard them. He looked furious. Wasn't this equivalent to saying that Ling Han wasn't afraid of him or cowered before him, and didn't dare to fight him? Instead, it was because there were pursuers behind him. Then what did he mean by being smug and arrogant for so long? This was completely a slap to his own face. Feng Jixing's hands involuntarily clenched into fists, and his hatred for Ling Han increased greatly. However, even though he hated Ling Han so much, Ling Han didn't pay any attention to him at all. Tong Xiao and the others had caught up again. They were really like lingering ghosts. Ling Han racked his brains. How could he get rid of these pursuers? Now, no matter where he hid, the other party would be able to quickly locate him with the help of a tracking treasure, and from there quickly find him. Thus, it was impossible to completely throw off his pursuers by depending on the terrain. Then what could he do? Ling Han thought as he ran. All of a sudden, he saw a black ant the size of a calf charge out. His pincers were like blades, slicing out at him. Abyssal Earth Ant Ling Han humphed and shot out a punch. 8 flashes of divine light burst forth at the same time. Pong! With a single punch, this Abyssal Earth Ant was killed. He had it. Ling Han's eyes lit up. His figure descended, and after walking forward for a while, he saw a cave ahead of him. There were black ants the size of calves entering and exiting. This was the lair of the Abyssal Earth Ants. He put on the void beast hide and concealed his tracks completely. Then he headed towards the ant nest. As expected, though some Abyssal Earth Ants stopped when they passed by him, as if they had sensed something, they still continued onwards after stopping for a moment. Ling Han ventured deep into the ant nest. This was not just for the sake of avoiding pursuers, but there were also good things in the ant nest, such as celestial medicine, divine metal, and so on. It was just that the divine fluid of the ant queen was not easy to obtain. There would definitely be a large number of soldier ants guarding that place. Once Ling Han was surrounded, it would not be so easy for him to use the void beast hide to hide his tracks. Hence, he circled around and only searched for those valuable things like celestial medicine and divine metal. And outside, Tong Xiao and the others had also caught up. This brat has entered the ant's nest. Tong Xiao looked at where the jade toad was pointing and couldn't help but frown. To say nothing of the fact that there was only one core formation tier consummate level cultivator among them, even if there were 4 true self tier cultivators, they would have to be careful. Once they charged into the ant's nest, it was possible that there would be no return. This brat has a treasure that can conceal his tracks, so he can sneak into the ant's nest. What a cunning guy. We can't give chase at all. The 4 old geezers' morale dropped drastically. They clearly knew that the brat was in the ant nest, yet they were completely helpless against him. Charge in. That would be suicide. Stay on guard. Feng Shaolin said. Just guard here. I don't believe that this brat will never come out. In the end, this brat still has to return to the outside world. He can't hide here forever. Hence, just wait for him to come out. I don't believe that he won't come out. Tong Xiao and the others all agreed, and sat down cross-legged outside. And in the ant nest, Ling Han roamed around, and obtained a considerable amount of good stuff. He was not greedy, but rather quietly arrived at the exit. The 4 old guys are still guarding me. Hee. Then they would never have imagined that I would come out so quickly, and return the way I came. Then, even if they used the tracking item to investigate, they would only think that there was a mistake with the treasure. You guys just stay here. When I return, just see how I will deal with you guys. Ling Han quietly walked back the way he had come. Only after walking for a very, very long time did he turn around. In this way, even if Tong Xiao and the others came back to their senses, it would be very, very difficult for them to catch up to him. He would look for the celestial light.